Still Loading Podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Matt, aka Stormageddon, Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Ryan K., Gilmer, Stephen P., and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, I'll tell you what's infamous, these goddamn ledge grabs. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval. In today's episode, we are talking about InFamous, their first game in the InFamous series. This episode, this topic, this game was chosen by my wonderful patrons. That's right. My patrons voted. I put up a handful of games for my Patreon poll, and they voted on it, and they chose InFamous. And I was happy to revisit this game. I have beaten this game before, though it was quite some time ago, and I revisited it for this episode. And it was spoiler alert, it was a good time. We'll be getting into more of that as we go along, of course. Joining me to discuss this infamous title from Sucker Punch, the infamously Bill from the Gaming Collecting Podcast and the Superpod Network. Infamously, Bill should be your new online handle. But Bill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fine and dandy. I'm managing, talking to you off mic. There's some existential dread that I won't be going into here, but y'all who listen to this probably know what we're talking about, but we're going to keep it positive while we can here. And we're here to talk about, honestly, a really good fucking game, though there are some like heavy moments in it that honestly make me a little bit uncomfortable. Do it like, talk like the basic setup of the plot of Infamous, how like the city that you're in, is it Liberty? Not Liberty City. That's
Empire City.
Empire City. Thank you. How it's like quarantined by the government. That's a little fucking crazy to think about with what just happened with the pandemic a couple of years ago. But
yeah,
we'll get into that as we go along. So yeah, man, thank you for coming on this episode. I've been looking forward to recording this. Really looking forward to talking about this game after I played it again. Like I have some issues with the execution, but I'm really impressed by Sucker Punch's first attempt at like an open world game. And I have a lot to talk about with this. So we'll get into this as per usual. We kick it off with personal recollections and stuff like that. So I want to throw it over to you, Bill. When did you first kind of play this game? And also, like, I have a sign-up sheet for my guests where it's like, hey, if you want to come back on the show, here's topics that I want to cover at some point. And Infamous was on it, and you wrote your name down for this. So when it came back up for the Patreon poll and won, I was like, all right, let me reach out to Bill. So I guess I digressed from my initial question to ask you, kind of turn that one question into a two-parter. The first part is, how did you get into this game and, your personal experiences? And the second part is, why did you put your name down for Infamous?
Okay. So it's a little interesting, actually. I did not get into Infamous right away. Like, Infamous came out around 2009, I want to say, and I was a freshman freshman in high school at that point.
May 26, 09. Oh my God, a freshman in, God, I'm so old.
Yeah, I was pretty I was pretty young when this came out, and I did not have any money, so I could not, despite Sucker Punch being arguably one of my favorite, actually they might be my favorite Sony developer at this point.
Really?
They're just the most consistent to me. Like they're kind of like, I view Sucker Punch kind of like how you view Insomniac. Like, just like I have like a huge just love for everything that company's put out, including their first game, Rocket Robot on Wheels.
I've been meaning to get a copy of that for so long, because I remember renting Rocket from Blockbuster back in the day, And just remember, there was like a thing where like you would get on like a roller coaster track, and I thought it was like the coolest thing, where it was
Mm-hmm.
like a platformer on a roller coaster track. But that's all I remember. I don't remember if it's like the entire game's on a roller coaster track, if there's just segments on roller coaster tracks. But like I know nothing about it other than that I remember vividly you could get on a roller coaster track.
Yeah, it's very traditional, like a 3D platformer from that era, but it had some very unique physics engine properties in it that made it
Mm-hmm.
stand out at the time. Um,
Okay.
but getting back into Infamous, obviously, like, huge fan of the Sly Cooper game. So when I saw they were making this game, I remember first seeing it and being like, "Wow, that's." I'm like, "Ah, they're following Naughty Dog and Insomniac's lead of making a more gritty, realistic game as opposed to their cartoony mascots."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I liked the whole idea because I totally got like the comic book vibe that this game was going for.
Yes.
I just didn't have any money, and it was one of those things where whenever I got a chance to get a game, like for like say like a birthday or Christmas, I would pick an RPG or something else, and it was just one of those that would always get kind of pushed farther and farther back.
Mm-hmm.
So then 2011 comes around, and the infamous uh, PlayStation Network outage happened, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually it came back, and Sony, people give Sony a lot of crap, but they were gracious enough to give everybody 2 free PS3 games and 2 free PSP games,
Yep.
for waiting that
Oh
out.
my God, you're unlocking a memory. I got Infamous as
Mm-hmm.
well through that, but something glitched and it didn't save to my account, so I had to buy a physical copy anyway.
Huh.
Oh my God, you're unlocking a memory for me, because I think I also ended up getting Little Big Planet that way.
Mm-hmm. So I already had Little Big Planet at the time, but
Mm,
when I saw the list of games, I saw Infamous there, and I was like, it's a sign. This is where I finally play Infamous. So
yeah.
I ended up picking up Infamous and then Wipeout HD, which was a
Okay.
digital only game at the time. So I was like, hell, why not get it? I forget what PSP games I got. I don't think I ever used them because I did not know how to download onto my PSP at the time. So that's a memory I don't remember. I could probably look into my store and figure it out, but that's
Mhm.
more effort than I'll ever do. But yeah, so I had finally got the chance to play Infamous, and I remember downloading it, and I think 2 might have already been out or was close at this point. So I was like, all right, by the time I'm done with 1, I should be able to get 2. So I booted it up, and I fell in love. Like, I was like, this is one of the coolest games I think I've played in a long time. It was super unique, just a different vibe, but it still had that sucker punch charm that makes me love that company. And as for the reason why I picked it, it was mostly because I've been wanting to talk about this game, like this series in general, for like the longest time. But I know for a fact, like when I look at like say like GNC, this isn't a game Alex would ever play, so it'd be one of those ones where I'd have to figure a way around that. And when I saw you had the list and I saw it was there, I was like, this is a perfect thing. I can talk about it with one of my good friends from the community. So that's kind of the reason why
Yeah.
I picked it.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I was actually surprised no one else put their name down on it, because like Infamous is one of those. Infamous is a weird series in that it sold really well. I mean, it sold decent well, obviously well enough that they made 2 sequels and had standalone games and all this other stuff. Like, it clearly did well for Sucker Punch and for Sony, but it feels like it's like, it honestly kind of feels like what happened um with Sucker Punch in the last gen, in the PS2 gen as well. You know, back then there was like, I consider there was like 3 big platforming franchises. You have Jack and Daxter, you have Ratchet and Clank, and you have Sly Cooper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those were like the big 3. And Jack and Daxter, I always felt like got Jack and Daxter and Ratchet I always felt got the like more publicity. They always felt like a little bit more on the forefront in terms of the zeitgeist. Not saying they weren't, Sly wasn't pushing it the edge either. Like, it was always popular. Like, the Sly Cooper series has a tons of fans. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to denigrate it or say it was lesser or anything like that. But I just, my perception of it back at the time was like, I saw all the time about Jack and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. I barely saw stuff about Sly. Like, at least in like on TV and stuff like that. And Infamous, it's the same thing. I remember hearing tons and tons of stuff about, what was what was Naughty Dog's big franchise, Uncharted. What was Insomniac's big franchise? They had Ratchet and Clank, and they also had Resistance,
Resistance.
which
Yep.
was also really big. So you had these two, and it was kind of in the same hierarchy. Like Naughty Dog had kind of like the number one slot in terms of popularity. This is not a level of like which game is better or anything like that, just in terms of like almost like cultural cachet. It was the same thing on PS2 and PS3. It was like Naughty Dog, Insomniac, and then Sucker Punch bringing up third, which is not, once again, I don't know if this perception is even correct. This is just kind of like how I perceived it at the time. Like from what I remember, it was like this. So do you agree with that at all? Do you feel like Sucker Punch kind of was always getting the third fiddle, even though they don't deserve it?
I do agree. And the way I always viewed Sucker Punch, the best way you can describe them, they are quietly consistent.
Yeah.
They hang out in the background. They're a one game studio. They can only make one game at a time. They put all their work, although supposedly they're a 2-game studio now, but I'm still not sure exactly what that means. But for most of their existence, they were a 1-game studio, and they would just quietly make their game. It would come out. It would be critically acclaimed. Everyone would play it, but then once it was over, they would just it would go back to being like a little footnote, and they'd move on to their next project. It's a weird thing, because like even going back to like Sly, Jak and Daxter to me, like I think had like the best story presentation. Ratchet had by far the most diverse gameplay. Like the guns in Ratchet, nothing tops that. Like Naughty Dog tried, but Jak and Daxter wasn't going to touch Ratchet in terms of gun gameplay. Sly, on the other hand, I think was the most unique. Like I think as a pure platformer, I think Sly Cooper is the best of the three.
As a pure platformer, I would agree, because like Ratchet and Clank, I love I love that series. My favorite game series of all time. It's not so much a platformer as it is like a third-person shooter with platforming elements. Like it's not straight third-person shooter by any stretch, but like it's also nowhere near a platformer. I shouldn't say nowhere near. It's not. It's light on platforming elements.
I always considered Ratchet to be a very good action shooter that also happens to have really good platforming.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. And like Jak and Daxter always felt like, especially in the second and third ones, it was like, we're going to make a platformer and then make you do shooting all the time.
We're going to make
which is why the shooting doesn't work at all.
Yeah,
and I think the Jak and Daxter series largely held the cultural zeitgeist on just bravado, because it did such a hairpin turn from like the quirky happy-go-lucky first game to like the holy shit, GTA 3 like changed the world, we're making our own version of that. And then you have Jak 2 and 3. And I would say that Sucker Punch didn't really get their flowers until Ghost of Tsushima. Like they Infamous Second Son is a fantastic game.
It is.
And no one fucking talks about it.
Nope.
The Infamous games in general, no one talks about. And it's frustrating because Sucker Punch, like you said, I think your assessment, dude, of how they're kind of like this quietly consistent series, like studio, is spot on. Like absolutely spot on. Because like Sly, I would say before Ghost of Tsushima, Sly Cooper was their most popular series. Like Infamous is great, don't get me wrong, but Sly Cooper still beat it on popularity, I would argue.
I'd say Sly 2 until Ghost of Tsushima. Sly 2 was probably their best game.
It's nuts, man. It's just weird to me that I feel like they're still so overlooked, and they really shouldn't be, because they do such good work. Like I'm excited for Ghost of Yotei or Yotei. I'm really looking forward to that, because I loved Ghost of Tsushima a lot. I actually think Ghost of Tsushima, this might be a hot take, got robbed for Game of the Year that year.
Yeah, probably.
What
won it that year?
It was Last of Us Part 2, which no one was going to stop that juggernaut. It had so much cultural cachet, whether you loved it or hated it. It was.
I'm not going to get into my opinions on that game here.
Not a fan, I'm assuming.
I'm not a fan, not for the reasons why a lot of people say. It's
No,
more
no,
just
I know you're allowed to not like the game and
yep,
not, and like we all know the fucking mouth breathers who are like,
yep.
oh, Ellie's gay, what? And
Oh yeah. Like I
meanwhile she
never
was
cared about that. I just
that,
my
and she was
reasoning.
literally gay in the first game. Like there's a
Yeah,
DLC for it, but fuck off if you not paying attention. Anyway,
yeah. To me, it was more just a quick thing. I'll say the reason I don't like that game is it's too long, but also it just made me miserable whenever I played it, and that's not a
those
good
games
sign.
make you sad.
Well,
Those games just make you sad.
the first one had an uplifting feeling, and like by the end I was very happy with the adventure. The second one, the whole time I was like, I just don't. It didn't help it came out during arguably one of the worst times of a lot of people's lives, but also like it was just such a miserable game. And I know some people love it and all the power to them, but like anytime I play that game, I'm like, this game just makes me upset and I just don't want to play it.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair.
That's my Last of Us Part 2 rant, and I'm gonna stop now.
No, it's fair. The reason I was always kind of like I thought that Ghosts got robbed was like, I don't know, it took the whole thing of like open world games and not making you look at a map the whole time.
Mm.
Like they found such a unique way between the combat and anyway, that's a whole nother thing. I did an episode on Ghost of Tsushima years ago, like a couple years ago, with cutscenes and cupcakes, that podcast, a wonderful podcast, which I don't know if they're still active.
I
I haven't seen. I have to double check. Anyway, we are here to talk about the first Infamous game. Though there's a lot of different Infamous games, but we're only talking about the first one, and that this first game came out on May 26th, 2009 in North America, May 29th, 09 in Europe, and Australia on June 4th, 09. Directed by Toby Fox, composed by Amon Tobin, who is a Brazilian electronic musician. I did not know that until I started doing research for this. Side note, I'm not that much of a fan of the soundtrack. No
oh
offense to
no.
Amon Tobin. I can't recognize a goddamn thing from it. Like, I'm not saying a game has to have like, memorable tracks, but I didn't feel anything from it. Like, it's fine if I can't remember the melody, but you have to make me feel. And I don't know, the soundtrack just didn't do it for me.
That's
Anyway,
fair.
we'll go into more of that as we go along. I did a whole bunch of research on this dude, and there's some wild stuff for this that I have for some fun facts to kick this off. Some of it I'm going to hold off from when we get to the gameplay and story and whatnot. But the game was in development for 3 years, and they had a staff of about 60 people, which for a AAA studio during the HD era, that's incredibly small. That's crazy how small that team is comparatively, but for a PS2 era, that would be a huge team. But you're talking HD graphics.
And Sucker Punch was still independent at this time too.
Yes, they were. They didn't get bought up by Sony until 2011. So, do you know what the original vision for this game was? You want to hear? If you, it's. I don't think if you know this, there's no way you could guess this unless you already knew this.
I read about something similar, but I could not tell you off the top of my head now.
So I was able to find the post-mortem. For those who don't know, I don't think I've ever really talked about it too much. I mentioned before I went to school for game design, and one of the things that they teach you in game design is that when you finish developing a game, that you write a post-mortem. And the whole idea is that it's supposed to be a self-reflection on your time making the game, so you can talk about what worked well. Generally, you provide 5 things that worked well, 5 things that didn't work, and that way you can learn about the things that did well, and you can iterate on them and bring them back, and then the things that didn't, you can change and find new ways to like fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to find the post-mortem for Infamous. It was published in Game Developer Magazine in October 2009. You can find the full archive of Game Developer Magazine. And I don't know about the full archive, but at least this issue, you can find it online for free. So I was able to look it up. And one of the most wild things that I genuinely did not expect to get out of this was that when they were trying to pitch this game, when they were trying to like tell people like, oh, it's like this and this and this and this, right? Like they're trying to explain what it was. They essentially tried it. They originally pitched it as Animal Crossing played as a superhero.
I remember the Animal Crossing thing. I completely forgot about the superhero thing though.
And one of the things they mentioned in the postmortem was that they were having a hard time describing the game, which they said in retrospect, that means our idea wasn't fleshed out enough. If we can't describe what the game is to someone and we're the ones that are supposed to be the experts on it, how can we expect that? How can we expect it to be good if we can't even understand our own vision? And I thought that was a really like smart way to look at it. During development, they didn't outsource any of the artwork. It was all made in studio, which makes this even more nuts. It was their first outing trying to create an open world, realistic looking game. You know, between Rocket, Robot on Wheels, and Sly, they were doing, you know, cartoon and cell shaded and also very, you know, linear, very narrowly focused. So this was like a huge learning curve for them. Like it was a completely different type of game they were making. I found an interview. I can't remember if it was with GameSpot or whatnot, but they were interviewing. Who was it? I wrote down who it was because he sounded angry. Brian Fleming. They interviewed Brian
the
Fleming,
founder of Sucker Punch founder.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was just because it was written down and I can't hear the tone of his voice. Like he could have been completely pleasant, but like the way it reads, it makes him sound pissed. The interviewer kept asking him like, so you have like this, like they played a demo of it. This interview was done before the game came out. And like, this reminds us of Crackdown and Assassin's Creed. And they had already been announced at the time. And they asked him like, was that any inspiration for this? And he's like, I haven't fucking played. He didn't say fucking, but I haven't fucking played those games. Like, I don't like, I've been like, this has been my entire existence for the last 6 months. I haven't had time to breathe. Now I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, but every time they would try to bring up a comparison of like, oh, it's kind of like this. He's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know your reference because he's been so buried. He was so buried in work. I'm assuming he was in crunch time at this because this interview was on March 2nd from 2009. So if the game came out in May, they were like 2.5 months away. They were definitely in crunch mode at that time. You know, so it was kind of interesting to like read the interview and just be so like he just seemed so standoffish, and I felt kind of bad for the interviewer, but at the same time they kept asking the same questions where he's like, I don't know the answer to this. And I'm like, why are you still asking this question? They also asked him about Prototype, which was already out at the time. Do you remember Prototype?
I remember Prototype because there was a whole there's a whole saga involving this game in Prototype that I don't know if you want to get into later, but
I mean, I actually don't know the saga of this, so like,
oh, okay.
If you want to talk about it a little bit, like, because this is all just kind of like, you know, fun facts and history stuff before we get into the gameplay. So like, by all means, talk about it.
So, Prototype is so when people compare InFamous, like I had seen like the Assassin's Creed comparison stuff, and I was always kind of like, I don't see the connection there, like maybe vaguely. Prototype is the one game where I'm like, this is about as close as you're gonna get. These two games they're about as close to. They're a little different, but this is about, if there's a genre, these are the two in it. Famously, Ben Yahtzee Croshaw, at the peak of his no punctuation days, actually reviewed both games, and he had actually challenged both of the studios to draw the main character from each game in a bikini, and he would vote on which one was the best. I think it ended up being a draw because both studios actually went and like came back with that.
Wow, I had no idea about this.
They were good sports about it. I believe Yahtzee said he enjoyed both games, but I believe he did give he gave a bit of a lead to InFamous because InFamous is a more developed game. I won't lie. Prototype's a great game in itself, but you can tell it had less budget than this one did in a lot of ways.
From what I played Prototype and I never beat it, I got stuck on a mission, and I just remember like the missions in Prototype. I remember the story wasn't as like interesting, but it's been a long time since I played Prototype, man. I never beat it. That's another forgotten game, man. Like that was a game that was like super hyped up in the mid 2000s, and no one fucking remembers it at all.
A lot of the fun in Prototype was like just ignoring the story and just doing stupid stuff because it's an open world game. Like, because like a gimmick in Prototype is you can possess anybody off the street, and you can just like possess like a 90-year-old senior citizen and then just run up a building and then do like a fucking suplex off the roof.
I forgot about that.
And it's just funny stuff like that. It's a good game, but when you compare the two, I do agree with Yahtzee. I think Infamous has a bit of an edge. But I just love the fact that both Radical and Sucker Punch played along with it and actually delivered in that way.
That's wild. I had no idea about any of that. That's really cool. Some of the other stuff that I looked up when they switched to Infamous after Slide, it's kind of they kind of did it to change things up. Brian Fleming compared it to Mario and Zelda. How Mario is like a lighthearted romp and Zelda is darker in tone. And I would say that kind of is a good comparison. Sly Cooper is to Mario as Infamous is to Zelda, right? Where it's meant for a slightly older audience. It tells a little bit more mature of a story. And he clarified, he's like, I'm not comparing the Infamous and Sly to those games. I'm just using those as a basis of comparison for like the tones, which I thought was kind of cool. It was kind of fitting, I should say. In this game, there is a good and bad ending, but the story was they approach writing the story is that you're not focusing on like what the good or bad ending is. Their approach was more from the perspective, if you suddenly had powers, how would you change? Like, how would it change you? And that, I would say they achieved that pretty well, though the good and bad like powers are very binary. There's not a whole lot of gray area of like making it ambiguous, like, is this the right choice, is this not the right choice? It generally, I think there's like one choice that I think was genuinely challenging, and the rest are like,
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. And when the rest are all like, well, I could, like kill this guy and take all his money, the shards, as it were. I mean, I could help this guy and he'll give me a shard, or I could kill him and take all the shards. What should I do?
I think my favorite dumb one was I could turn this valve, but then I'll get blasted in the face with some more of that crud. Or I could make this guy over here do it.
I'm like, holy shit. Like, I wonder what's the good and evil one, huh? Mm-hmm. And I at first, like, I remember when, back in the day when morality systems were a big thing. And that was a common criticism of a lot of morality systems, was that there wasn't really any actual serious morality questions. It was more just, this is good, this is bad. It was very binary. It was like, do you want to run over this track of puppies, or do you want to save all these puppies from a train that's coming? And it's like, well, I wonder what the good and bad one is here. They never made it very... They made it too obvious, was always the criticism.
Yeah, I will give it some credit, though. I do, the way that Cole McGrath, voiced by Jason Cottle in this game, the way he inflicts it, like, and like voices them, it's just so like ridiculous. I kind of love it.
Well, in retrospect, like, looking at it now, with eyes of 2025 compared to back to 2009, I actually think it works for this, because one thing that I noticed about this game, more than, and I guess Prototype is similar to this. This is the no pun intended. This is the Prototype. This is the kind of the template that we see now in like Marvel Spider-Man. Like what Insomniac did with Spider-Man and a lot of open world games, and how they handle like the superhero genre that we know it as, like the most popular superhero ones. I like it. I feel like this game really kind of cemented what we see in specific. I'm specifically citing the Spider-Man games. Like, there is so much DNA of this game in Marvel Spider-Man. Like, it's crazy. Just the way that the powers work, the way that like you get your skills and everything. Like in Spider-Man, you get experience by taking on enemies, and then there's skill trees and whatnot. Now, I have not played Spider-Man 2, but in the first one, you can choose different skill tree paths and all that other stuff. Very kind of similar to like the skill trees in Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff like that. And in Infamous, it's essentially the same thing with less skill trees. Like it's like a simplified version of what Marvel Spider-Man would become, and both in terms of like visual presentation. Obviously, it was a whole generation prior and everything, but like I was just, when I was playing it, I was genuinely blown away by how much they nailed the comic book aesthetic, the whole hero or super villain. And so when you have the whole thing is like this. It's a comic book. You're either choosing to be the hero, or you're choosing to become the villain. If you got powers, which would you choose? In comic books, the characters are very binary in their morals, right?
Hmm.
Generally, there are some that are a little bit more gray. X-Men has a lot of stuff like that, but by and large, especially when you're like looking at your characters like Spider-Man, like Superman, like Batman, there is some gray area with it, which Cole does have. He's pretty violent. He takes out enemies pretty aggressively, like Batman does. Um, but like, I don't know, I thought they really nailed the superhero aesthetic, and when I was playing it, I was very impressed by how, like, almost, how can I put this, the storytelling and the world building felt very modern. The jokes felt very 2009, which is fine.
Yeah.
That is going to age quicker. That's totally okay. um the jokes and writing felt very 2009, and obviously the graphics suffered a lot due to its age, even though they don't look bad for
Yeah, I'd
2009.
say it's like it's definitely dated, especially if you play two right after and you go, oh yeah, I see. But for an '09 game, it still looks pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, it does look pretty good. The only other thing that really reeks of it being 2009, and also it reeks of Sucker Punch doing their first open world game, is the ledge detection, which I hinted at the beginning of the episode. It's a little too sticky, in my opinion. We'll get into that in a
Yeah.
little bit, but we'll get into that into the gameplay. But it is a little bit too sticky. Uh, and now we were talking about like the themes and whatnot, the comic book vibe of this. They did actually bring in a comic book writer named Bill
Mhm.
Harms, who helped them with the story and dialogue. And he actually wrote comics for Marvel. He wrote one shots for Wolverine. He also worked for 3 years creating a series of comics for the AAFES, which is the Army and Air Force Exchange Service.
Mhm.
I did look him up, his website. He currently is working as a studio narrative director for Lightspeed LA,
Oh,
which is
cool.
a AAA development team for Tencent. So he's currently working on something for Tencent, as far as I'm aware.
You know what's
Um,
really interesting there?
hmm.
You say he was a Marvel writer, but it's really interesting because this game gives me so many DC vibes. It's like not even funny. It's just an
I
interesting thing.
I could see the characters are very DC esque. The gameplay reminds me a lot of Marvel Spider-Man. Like that's like
True.
the story, the character of Cole is very kind of maybe Batman-esque a little bit, like something traumatic happens to him and he has to go out the rest of the game trying to like work through that trauma and make things right. Out of like,
So I actually have an
I don't know.
interesting like character study on Cole, like when I was
Go
playing the
for it.
game. The way I view the game is Cole starts the game out, he's already kind of a bad character, like he's kind of already villainish when you start playing.
Hmm.
The way I've always seen it is if you go for like the good the hero route, the hero route is very much like your Cole is becoming the hero he could be if he applied himself that way, and then
Yeah.
playing the villain method is him just kind of giving into what he already was. That's kind of like how I always viewed it, and I think we won't get to
Mm.
story yet, but the story kind of alludes to that a little bit.
You can kind of see that a little bit, especially with like how his girlfriend treats him after, like, which she's not wrong for the way she treats him based off what happens, but
Mm.
we'll get into all that in a moment. But no, I think I'm kind of with you on that, because the vibe I got from Cole as well was that he was already kind of slightly predisposed to a little bit more of a villainous route.
Mm.
And you kind of work against it. I know the good route is like the canon route, but like still, that's interesting. I think I'm with you on that. I think I'm actually with you on that. Uh, I don't have too much else for in terms of like just behind the scenes stuff. I have like one other thing I want to bring up when we talk about gameplay, which I guess we could go into now, because normally I don't care. Like normally I'm pretty loosey goosey with story spoilers, excuse me. But I actually think this game has a good story.
The
So
twist at the end, in particular, is
yeah,
very spoilery.
I really like the story of this game. But before we get into the gameplay, at least for the setup, for I probably should have set this up at the top of the episode. But for those who have not played this, the premise of Infamous is you play as a character named Cole McGrath, and yeah, I was going to say Cole Stratton. What's that? Is that from something? I don't know. I don't know if Cole Stratton is actually a person. I'm gonna have to. I don't know where I'm getting Stratton from. But oh, he's an actor apparently. Go figure. I think I heard him on a podcast. That's my spit where it is. Anyway, sorry, losing the thread. So you play as Cole McGrath, and you're a courier. You know, you get hired to deliver packages from one place to another, and you're delivering a package through Empire City where you live, and all of a sudden it blows up. I believe someone even tries to warn you. Um, I think it's you find out later. Is his character named John? I don't remember the character's name.
Oh, John.
It's John.
John is a walking spoiler.
Yes, which we will not explain who he is or what he is. And John's such a vague name, no one's going to know if they haven't played it, so that'll work out nicely. Um, but it explodes. The whatever is in that package, it explodes. And I'm not talking about like it's going to blow up a building. It blows up like a third of the city. Like
Yeah.
it fucking like it levels a whole chunk of the city and causes it's essentially like a nuke going off is like the comparison this is. But when he wakes up in the epicenter of the blast, he suddenly has electricity powers.
Well,
And
I love the way
yeah,
it frames it too, where he's like running out of like this like flaming hellscape, and like he runs into a electric thing, and it just like shocks him, but he's fine, and he's like, "What the hell?" Like he has no idea at the time.
yeah, he's like so confused as to why he's not hurt. And that's how he gets his powers. And so when that blast goes off, the government locks down the city and puts everything into quarantine. And man, there's so much to talk about with the themes of this game. It's fucking nuts, especially with our current world landscape, political landscape here in the U.S. Which I'll keep as much real life stuff out of it, but there is some things that like it draws some parallels, which we'll get into.
Hmm.
But yeah, so the government locks down the city, and you just kind of start kind of mucking about and going about your business when people start trying to contact you. I think. Do you remember the character's name that tries to contact you first?
So the game starts out with there's a little tutorial mission thing, and then uh, a few events happen. Cole gets portrayed as the bad guy, and then you're captured by this government-esque agency, and you're contacted by this woman named Moya.
That's what it is, Moya. Thank you. And she's asked basically saying like, "Hey, the government wants to come in and blow the hell out of this city. I need you to work with me so we can A, prevent that from happening, and B, get our hands on the thing that essentially did this." And that's the premise of that. That's the overall like opening plot of the game, right? It doesn't really that's not spoiling too much. That's just a bare bones like here's your setup. Here's your setup for the story, and here's why you have your powers, and go, right?
Hmm.
Um anything you want to comment on the setup that you think that I didn't like maybe I should have gone into or anything like that?
Um, Not really. You've got it pretty much like spot on. Like the only other real plot thread that's kind of mentioned is when the explosion went off. It also caused like a plague to go around, which is never really explained properly. But I guess it had to do with like the radiation flying around.
Oh yeah, because people keep like they're like passed out in the streets and shit like that. Like, and one of the game mechanics that you get is that you can heal. Well, you can choose to either bio leech, which takes the people's life force, but in turn you get like it recharges your energy, your
Mm.
electric energy, or you can heal them and get good boy experience, and that's about
Yes.
it. Good
um,
boys.
it's so you can clear out the thousands of bodies in your path all the time just to get them out of the way.
Yep.
Um, it's kind of
Uh,
morbid when you think of it that way.
It is a little bit. I mean, I always just did the heels because it's like little shock pads. I always thought it was kind of fun.
Well, yeah, it's fun. It's a good way to build up a hero experience real fast, and it, as I said, it clears them out of the way so you don't accidentally plow through them and get negative experience. So,
Well, and actually, something I read in the postmortem and just kind of talking about your interactions with the citizens there, that was something they were having to really kind of figure out. Like, I have to figure out which section it was in the postmortem, whether it was like stuff that went well or stuff that didn't go well. But one of the things they were talking about was that they originally had it so like every time you um every time you healed a citizen, you would get experience. And so play testers just broke the game. They would purposely attack the citizens to injure them, heal them, and then just get a shitload of experience that way. So they could just like cheese the game that way. So I think that's why, like, if you injure a citizen and then like revive them, you don't get anything type of thing.
The way it works is when you injure a citizen, you get negative experience, so it completely counteracts the boost you would get by bringing them back up.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. So they had stuff like that. They also had something where they had to disincentivize people from just killing every single civilian to get experience as well. So it was stuff like that. Like they had to tinker with a lot of like the interactions that you have with the civilians in this open world to make it feel a little bit more natural. I guess though, unless there's something else you want to go into it, we should probably talk about the gameplay since we're already kind of touching on it now.
Do you want to save like the differences between hero and villain for later?
I mean, yeah, we'll talk about basic power-ups and then we'll talk because there is different powers that you get for good versus evil.
True. I also wanted to bring up like the way you play the game changes drastically depending on what playthrough you're going for. At least in the way I play the game.
Did you play both evil and good? I've only ever played good because I can't bring myself to play evil.
I've done both, and boy, will I tell you, it's a very different experience when you play evil.
Oh man, okay. That I'm excited to learn more about it then. So your basic like attack, you have a lightning bolt, which is you just throw lightning bolts. There's no amount of electricity. It doesn't consume any energy. You just you're just yeeting lightning bolts at people.
I think it does actually consume electricity, but it's very slow. Because I believe I was like blowing up this one thing, and I noticed like one of the spears disappear.
Because I don't. So originally, like I was under the impression that it didn't at all, because so in the postmortem they talk about it where this blew my mind. I'm going to actually read a full quote if you don't mind from the postmortem. It's about specifically kind of like this part of the gameplay mechanics, because you do get other powers later on. You can get like bombs, you get like or like
Grenades.
little electric grenades, I should say. You get like basically like psychic kinesis blasts or whatever, which like or like EPM blasts pretty much at like or EMP, that's the word I'm looking for. EMP blasts that kind of shoot enemies or vehicles or like objects away. You also have like big drops, like if you're falling from a height and you hit the attack button, you charge up and you do like a shockwave. Like
you can summon a thunderbolt and just like mow down everything in front of you.
That's a good guy one. That's a good guy power up. This one was wild. So in the number 5 for what went right, they title it as prototype, test, and iterate. And this is kind of crazy to me. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. One of the first, and I'm going to read this verbatim from their postmortem. It's a little long, so I'll let you know when it's done. One of the first lessons we learned at Sucker Punch was the difficulty of designing a fun video game on paper. We've never had much luck predicting which ideas will end up being fun and which ones won't. The successes we've had have been the result of trying out lots of ideas, pursuing the ones that had a smattering of fun in them, then testing and iterating until we'd refined the fun into its purest form. For example, InFamous started with an ammo model, much like other shooters. Defeated enemies dropped ammo for your superpowers. Ammo came in multiple colors, and each superpower used a particular kind of ammo. One kind of ammo needed to be used the right way and timed out if not used quickly enough. Enemies also dropped health packs, which looked like a different color of ammo to the player. There were good reasons for all of this complexity. We wanted to limit the use of the most powerful hero abilities. We wanted to encourage players to use a broad set of their superpowers, and so on. We'd been uncomfortable with the way the system worked, but felt boxed in by all the constraints we'd placed on the design. The focus test trumped all of this. Players hated the ammo model. They were confused. They didn't like having to conserve ammo. They didn't think picking up glowing balls made them feel like a superhero. It was a complete train wreck. The focus test forced us to radically simplify things. After some false starts, we unified ammo and health around the hero's core electrical powers. Drawing electricity from the environment replenishes the hero's store of energy, which is then used up by his powers. Drawing electricity also heals damage to the character. The player ended up with an easy to understand model and a simple rule to follow. When in trouble, look for the electricity to drain. At the same time, we gained a powerful way to limit the player's abilities. If an area of the city was blacked out, the player would be relatively weak in that area. Overall, this change was a home run. Without our core belief in focus testing, we would have had a hard time making this large departure from shooter conventions. That's the end of the quote. Isn't that kind of crazy, though?
Oh, yeah, I can tell immediately this game would be a less fun experience if you had ammo. That's for sure. At least in the way that they were explaining. So my only reason why I feel like it does drain power just extremely slowly is when you're fully drained, you can't use the regular electric shot.
Oh, and you know what? The reason I think that I was confused, one of the enhancements you can get is that you every time you zap an enemy, you gain electric back.
Mm-hmm.
So I never ran, like, if I was running out of electricity, like I threw too many grenades, excuse me, or the electricity rockets and shit like that, I would just find an enemy and just mash the R1 button, and all of a sudden I would get a whole bunch of electricity back. So like you could, if there was enemies, you could consistently recharge, but it was obviously much slower than just finding an electrical source and charging it from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think that's why I was confused by it. But yeah, I think you're right. Then it does slowly drain. But man, there's so many different powers in this. Like I was trying to find like a list of them, and now I'm like, oh shit, I don't know. Like there's so many different ones. You have Thunder Drop. You have the induction grind, which is really cool. Any type of
I
like
love that.
electricity, any type of power line or like rail line, you can basically grind it like Ratchet and Clank grind boots. You also have the static thrusters, which I don't know, is that a good? I think that's, you can do that on both.
You can do it on both. The static thrusters combined with the rail grinding is the funnest way to explore the city. It is amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Because you'll be like flying, especially if you do it from the rooftops, you'll like grind on an electric wire, hop off. You have so much momentum, so you're carrying it like 30 feet afterwards, just going through there. And then you hit the static thrusters to essentially kind of hover a little bit longer. And then you find like hover long enough so you find the next electric line to grind. And you grind on that and you kind of rinse, wash, and repeat. And if you get good at it, you can like really get these like really interesting, these really fun, almost parkour mechanics. And parkour was an influence on the movement in this game. They specifically cited that. I will say, if you've played a Sunset Overdrive, that feels like a more perfected version of what they were trying to go for with this. But Sunset Overdrive also came out a generation later and for like 5 or 6 years after this. So like that's not to denigrate this game. I'm just using that as an example of like, I feel like this is what the Sunset Overdrive is what they were trying to go for before they knew how to do it exactly. And that's also a different studio. Sunset Overdrive is Insomniac. But anyway, sorry.
I mean, even 2 and Second Son improved the parkour significantly.
I will have to. I remember Second Son was like super smooth. Second Son, it's funny. There is slight spoilers for the gameplay mechanics of Second Son, which is not the second game in the series, listeners. It is like the third, technically.
Third game, yep.
Fourth if you count Festival of Blood, but that's just like a standalone DLC. So yeah, it's the third game. This is a very slight spoiler, so if you don't want to spoil something for Infamous, skip ahead like 5 seconds. But like the whole ammo thing with this that they're talking about here, I feel like they reused in Second Son, but they did it in the right way where there was no ammo still. It was just you would just have to stock up on whichever powers you wanted to use, right? So anyway, because there's different powers in Second Son. Anyway, that I thought that was kind of cool. When I was reading that, I'm like, oh shit, they reused it, but they kind of modified it a little bit. But we'll save that for a Second Son episode whenever we get to it. What were some of the villainous? Because I don't remember. I only ever played the good guys. Oh, and sorry, there's arc restraint, which allows you to like basically hog tie or pin an NPC to the ground, whether good or bad. If you do it to a bad guy, you get good boy points. If you do it to a civilian, then you get bad boy points.
Yeah.
Bio
And
leech is always bad no matter what.
you will accidentally bind a good person. It just
I've done it
happens. It,
numerous times.
and I'm always like, oh no, and then you can't do anything to help them, so you just kind of have to run away.
And then poor Civ is like, what did I do?
Literally, like you'll because there'll be like a horde of villains like lying down, and then there's
Yeah.
one of the many. And the reason why I try to pick up all the regular civilians that are down is because sometimes they'll be mixed in, and you won't notice, and you'll go, uh oh.
Or there's an enemy right next to it, like you said, and it's like you try to bind that dude, but you accidentally, flick the joystick, and all of a sudden you bind a Civ, and you're like, God damn it! There that goes. That's annoying.
Mm.
But yeah, the BioLeech pulse heal is the thing that heals things. You also get a radar pulse, which allows you to search for different like electrical sources, as well as any what you find out later are called oh my gosh, they're not pulse shards. What are they called? They're shards.
Oh, the blast shards.
Blast shards. Thank you. Because when that big whatever it was, which we won't say yet because that's in the spoiler section, explodes, it leaves shards all over the city, and the more you collect, you actually upgrade the amount of your electricity bar on the top of the screen will grow depending on how many you collect. And there's like different milestones. Like the first, like you only have to collect like 3 or 4 to have it upgrade the first time, but by the end you have to collect like 50 to like get the next up to get like 1 bar higher, and it gets crazy towards the end. But I always thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, so that's what the radar pulse does. It allows you to search for different things, as well as these things called dead drops, which are story portions or story elements. Some of the I think is I'm trying to remember what the good versus bad traits are. Like,
So there's like one specific power that's the good one, and then the evil one. It's like basically the OP power. Like for the good side, it's the thunderbolt drop where you like launch out the thunderstorm in front of you.
yeah,
The evil one is actually, it's sad because this is like such a fun power, but you never use it if you're playing good. It's called arc lightning, and
yeah.
it's literally you're using the Sith lightning from Star Wars, and
Okay.
you basically shoot out a continuous stream of like electricity, and it arcs off of any conductive surface, and it just kills everything. It is so fun, but my god, it sucks that you can only use it in an evil playthrough.
I mean, I guess it makes sense because if you're using the Emperor's lightning, it's evil, that kind of stuff.
Like if you're nearby like a water puddle and a whole bunch of electric stuff, it is insanity. It is so crazy.
Honestly, the visuals too, like to tie this in a little bit for all the electricity stuff is really cool. They do a great job of lighting for an early PS1 title. Like I know 2009 is technically 3 years after the not PS1, sorry, PS3. I know 2009 is technically 3 years after the PS3 launch, but like that was still like the PS3 was so hard to develop for that like that's still pretty early on. Like if you look at PS3 pre 2010 and then PS3 post 2010. It's fucking nuts.
The best
Like,
example is look at Uncharted 1 and then Uncharted 2.
yeah, it's crazy. And Uncharted 2, I think, came out in 2009 as well. But like, remember, this is Sucker Punch's first PS3 game, so they were just figuring out like HD textures and shit for the first time. Which, as we now know, it was like a major issue for game developers learning how to develop a game in HD. I mean, that's one of the biggest. Not to get up on a soapbox, one of the reasons why game development costs have ballooned as much as they have, besides the fact that games are so massive, is the switch to HD. HD is nowhere nearly as expensive as it was back in 2009 and 2010. Like it's become a much like it's become a lot easier to do, but even so, it's still one of the reasons like costs ballooned during the PS3 and PS4 era. It was just HD games were insanely cost expensive, like not cost prohibitive, just insanely expensive. Sorry.
Actually, you want to know like a great comparison? Ratchet and Clank. Tools of Destruction is a gorgeous looking game.
Yes.
But then you look at a Crack in Time, and it's like, god damn, like that's only a couple of years apart, and they had gotten so much better.
God, I need to replay those games. I love the. It's funny. Like I feel like Ratchet and Clank is also a series where it's like when people like that series, like like myself, people fucking like that series,
Hmm.
but it never gets like big mainstream success. Like or even A Rift Apart did like pretty well, but it was nowhere near as big as I feel it should have been.
And that was
Anyway,
such a good game too.
it's a very good game, beautiful fucking game. Holy shit.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, you also get a power called psychic vision, which you use periodically. Generally you use it for a couple story beats as well as some of the side missions where basically Cole can shoot electricity into people's brains and he can read their neuroelectric energy, any residual neuroelectric energy, and they can use it to view he can use it to view their last memories and stuff like that, as pseudosciency as it sounds. So that, yeah, there's, you get a lot of different powers in this game, and the it is kind of cool that the good and bad give you some pretty drastic differences in terms of
Mm.
it. uh their goal wasn't necessarily that the game would change much for you, like the missions wouldn't change too much for you whether you play good or bad, though there are good and bad side missions, and every time you do one you lock out the other. So if you
Hmm.
there's like this correspond, if there's corresponding good and evil side missions. And if you do the good one, you lock out the bad one. If you do the bad one, you lock out the good one. Um, the game does try to railroad you into one or the other. Like they really want you to commit to good or commit to evil.
Yeah, you can't technically do a neutral playthrough because you will eventually get forced into one or the other.
Yeah. There's like one, I guess there's that one big mission that the one that's kind of morally ambiguous that I was talking about that
Yep.
like forces you into, which honestly I think is pretty good writing in my opinion. Like make it painstakingly obvious for the whole game and then throw something that actually makes you think.
Mm.
And I think that kind of works really well. So yeah, there's so many different cool abilities. You can shoot missiles later on in the game, like that's really handy. You have the grenades, like I mentioned. I don't know much of the many of the evil powers. Like, is there any other evil powers that you'd really want to touch on?
No, they're actually there's only the one exclusive for each. Believe it or not,
Okay,
it's the Thunderbolt for good and then Arc Lightning for evil.
okay, that's what it was.
It's
Okay.
basically
Oh, I could have sworn like one, like the grenades were different or something, or like the kind of like the EMP blast was different for evil than it was for good, but maybe I'm wrong.
if it was, it wasn't enough of a difference for me to notice while playing.
Okay.
Um, they might act a little different potentially, but like the ultimate move is the only one that's like significantly different.
Okay. That makes sense then. Um, so yeah, the gameplay I think it does a good job of reinforcing the narrative pretty well. Like the narrative tries to railroad you into a good or evil playthrough.
Mhm.
Um, that's pretty much
There's only one
that.
aspect of the gameplay that I don't like:
What's that?
hand-to-hand combat.
They actually, that they talked about that in the postmortem. They mentioned how they didn't like, they had an idea of doing hand to hand combat, and it just kind of like it turned into a third person shooter pretty much.
It's because you can get into good old fisticuffs in this game. It's just so repetitive and not fun, and it really doesn't do much. I'm not going to get into it because it's in the sequel, but the sequel significantly improved it.
The sequel takes place, if I remember correctly, in New Orleans, right? Or like
In
some
a
in like a fictionalized version of it.
morally ambiguous in New Orleans, it's definitely down south.
Okay.
It's a city called like New Marias, I think. But
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
it's basically it's basically Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, and I was about to be like, is there anything else to talk about the gameplay? Well, we only focused on the combat. I said I would talk about the exploration, and the traversal and everything. I have never played a game that simultaneously has good and bad traversal. Like
It is very interesting how it works.
when it hits, it fucking hits. When it doesn't hit, oh my god, it's the most obnoxious thing in the world. Oh man, they talk about it in the postmortem. There was a section. You know what? I mean, I'll try to find it again because I thought there's a lot of interesting stuff in this. Man, there was a lot of really interesting tidbits. Here it is. This is also a fairly long, not nearly as long as the other one, but I thought this was interesting thing since we're talking about traversal in the world. What in the what went right section, number one, they talk about city construction. Here it goes. From the outset, we knew Infamous would be competing with products built by bigger teams with bigger budgets. To succeed, we needed to figure out how to generate a large city with realistic levels of detail without hiring an army of modelers and texture artists. We decided to focus on building reusable content rather than modeling and texturing buildings only to use them once. We designed most buildings to be used a handful of times in different parts of the city. Furthermore, the buildings all use one of a limited number of footprints, 18 in the final game. This isolated the buildings themselves from the layout of the hex-shaped blocks, typically containing 3 to 5 buildings, which form the basic streamable unit of the game. Hex, quote-unquote, hex layouts can be reused independently of the buildings on them, since the buildings sharing the same footprint can easily be swapped, and the buildings themselves can be customized, swapping out the street level storefronts, adding billboards and signage, and so on. So, real quick, I'm jumping out of it. There's one paragraph left. That was a whole lot of jargon to me, but the last little bit I think is what clarified it. They basically are saying how like they reused a lot of it, obviously, to save on money and time, but it almost seemed like they were able to like randomize, or like not randomize, but like mix and match, different levels. So if it was like a 4-story building, right, you could mix and match, like each story had its own thing that you could mix and match. So like they're saying you could swap out the stores at the bottom for something else and vice versa. So that's how it made it seem like to me. Like they picked a handful of different things and they had 18 different sets of like these footprints to choose from, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I think. Okay. Back into the last paragraph from this section. All the stuff on a hex that isn't part of a building, streets and sidewalks, stoplights and streetlights, dumpsters, debris, and garbage, information for our pathing system, and so on, is placed or modeled once for each hex, with building footprint shaped holes left for the buildings themselves. All this work was reused each time the hex was reused. We had roughly 100 hexes in the game, but only 27 different hexes, so hexes saw a lot of reuse. The risk of this sort of reuse is repetition, but the reward is a city 2 to 3 times as big as a city built entirely of custom fit pieces. We felt the risk was worth the reward and it paid off for us. So I read all that only to realize that's not what I wanted to read. I won't read the full paragraph because this one, the one I wanted to read is also a couple of paragraphs long. I am not going to do that. What they did talk about though was that they tried to design a lot of the movement mechanics based off of how they design slides, not necessarily copying the mechanics, but their method and the methodology they used to come to the determination of slides mechanics. They try to repeat that same methodology for Infamous, and it was, and I quote, "It was a rolling disaster, eating up a year and a half of senior engineer time as we iterated through failed approaches." End quote. And so their goal, actually, I'm going to read a little bit more. Our goal was to let the player grab and climb anywhere that looked plausible, but we wildly underestimated how many places in a realistic city look climbable. The resulting density of options made figuring out the player's intent from controller input a real challenge. We call this process of inference, quote unquote, reading the player's mind through his thumbs, and believe it's the key to combining functionality and approachability in a game. Controllers are pretty crummy input devices, really. Translating some imprecise joystick movements and poorly timed button presses into the vast universe of possibilities for what a real person can do requires some serious guesswork. Do a good job and your game is immersive, with the player focused on the experience rather than the controller. Do a bad job, the controller is thrown at the screen. It's the difference between the players blaming themselves for a mistake and blaming the game for the mistake. Eventually, we stumbled upon an approach that worked pretty well, and the resulting climbing and jumping is one of the best parts of the game. In our final jumping mechanic, we start by letting the player air steer while looking for climbable points near the player's manual trajectory. If the player steers close enough to a climbable point, we autocorrect the input to steer coal to land on the exact climbable point rather than merely nearby. If there's any lesson here, it's that sometimes it's worth blowing a ton of effort on a single feature, but only if you're pretty darn sure that it's going to be a defining feature of the game. There's the end of that section. But I think that's fascinating.
It is, and it makes a lot of sense with how this game kind of works, because I'm not gonna lie. Most of the time when I'm doing parkour, my strategy is just mash the jump button and see what happens.
Dude, same, because especially when you're climbing up the side of a wall, like I think what was frustrating is that you could tell there was spots where there was too many potential points that Cole could grab
Oh,
onto,
yeah.
and so the game would be like, "Fuck it, I'm not going to grab any of them. You're just going to fall." And then, God damn it! Then, especially when there's timing missions, and then you're panicking trying to get back up, like the traversal in this game works in the sense that like when you have that, like you mentioned before, Bill, you know, the grind into the fucking air thrust, the thrusters, and then grind again, and you can keep this fluid movement going. It works amazing. But when you are trying to like climb down a building, and you say you just want to fall down, and there's like a narrow spot you can fall down into, you're not going to fall down. You're going to suck to the wall.
Yep.
And then you are trying to climb down, and every time you hit the circle to let go, you just suck to the next one down below. So you never really get a chance to just fall. So they corrected that in future games, and you could tell it was early on. But man, did it get frustrating both in terms of climbing and also falling, just trying to get off of buildings. Like, and if there was like a blast shard on the side of a building, God, good fucking luck.
It's the one blast shard that you spend 20 minutes trying to get because Cole just keeps like defying physics and flying through the air. And then eventually you get it and you're like, it wasn't even worth it.
No, it wasn't, because I still need 40 more to get the next fucking upgrade.
Yep. How often did you get sidetracked? Like you had your mission objective, but then you'd be like, ooh, a dead drop. Ooh, a shard. Ooh, another shard. Ooh, a
Oh, all the
shard.
time. Absolutely all the time. And I used to not, like my first playthrough, I didn't do any of it. And then I remember getting stuck on something, and I was like, oh, maybe I should go for these shards. And then after getting some shards, I'm like, oh, this makes it so much more
Mm.
easy. And then this playthrough, I was like, get the shards. Because I think I didn't quite platinum the first game because the shards were just so like, I think I got all the shards,
There's
but I
a
think there was like
lot.
something else. Oh, there's like hundreds. At least with this, like it's not like, I consider it like Assassin's Creed Light in that sense, where it doesn't feel nearly as like obtuse to get those collectibles. And while there are still a ton, it like the collectibles tangibly benefit you with the game, where I feel like Assassin's Creed they don't usually, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
The way that they laid it out is actually really good where it's like you're basically constantly finding them, so it's like you're never like by the end, of course, you're gonna have to find that one that's missing. But like you can't, if you're not going for 100%, you're gonna constantly find these things. So you should have enough for the experience gains you need.
Mm.
Um, I will say one of the things like that like was like the biggest dopamine hit for me was like um when you clear out an area, like the map will like light up and be like, this area is cleared of bad guys and it's now like a good zone.
Oh, I
Or
love that. I fucking love that, because then it's like bad guys won't spawn here anymore. So you literally feel like you're taking back the city.
Mhm.
And so Cole has a best friend named Zeke, who like kind of is a little bit of a fuck up. We'll get into that in the story. But he'll call you periodically. It's like, hey man, the people are saying this city's really turning around. Keep doing what you're doing.
Mm. So unrelated, but one fun thing I noticed right away that's actually a kind of fun little Easter egg. Did you notice Zeke's running animation?
Any of their running animations are fucking insane.
But you know what's fun about Zeke's?
What?
It's Murray's from Sly.
Oh my god, you're right. It is.
I noticed it right away. I'm like, it's Murray. Also, Cole has the little Sly badge on the back of his backpack, which I love seeing.
Yeah, I love little nods like that. I did feel like Cole's just to talk about running animations, just kind of remind me of GTA's running animations, just like
Mhm.
really kind of like very exaggerated.
Oh yeah, Zeke's was just funny though because I saw it right away. And I'm like, it's Murray. I'm like, thank you, Sucker Punch. You remembered your past.
I mean, even though they had, what is it? They made they made three Sly games over the course of like 6 years or something like
Mhm.
that. And then they made this game over the course of three. So like, I'm not surprised. Like, Sly, they probably just, I mean, but if they only work on one game at a time, when did Sly 3 come out? Now I'm
Uh,
curious.
2004, I want to say, or five. It was either early five, late four.
2005, September 26, 2005. So that makes
Oh,
sense.
late five actually.
Yeah, and this game came out in 2009,
Mm.
so like it was just about 3 years, that a little over 3 years that they, or almost four, in fact, it was close to 4 years that this game was in development. Uh, that's crazy. Like that, you're right. They really like have a slow release schedule. Not saying that's bad. Like they take their time on stuff.
But that's the thing. Like they've never released what I would call a bad game. Like every game, like it feels like, yeah, they might be a little glitchy and a little rough in points, but it feels like they've put the effort and polish into a game that it doesn't feel like you're buying an unfinished product at launch. You feels like you bought something that they put their heart and soul into.
Yeah, I mean, you can even see it. Like if you like, wow, because after Infamous Second Son came out, Ghost of Tsushima has a 6 year turnaround time. Like you don't see Sucker Punch for 6 years until Tsushima comes out.
And they've released arguably a masterpiece, like in perfection. Like,
In each game, I think that like, so Infamous Second Son I think is a much better game than people give it credit for.
oh, I love
Um,
Second Son.
I like, and oh man, Paper Trail. We'll get to Paper Trail when
Oh,
we get to
ooh.
like that is like one of my favorite things ever. I fucking loved Infamous Paper Trail, but we'll talk about that later on. We'll talk about that on Second Son's episode. Two things I want to bring up before we kind of get into story and themes and stuff, because I feel like we've touched enough on the gameplay at this point. Um, I was not aware of this. There was web browser games that
Mhm.
came out around the same time that these came out or whatever. They were not developed by Sucker Punch, but they are kind of tied to the first Infamous game. Well, actually, sorry, the second one's tied to the second Infamous game. The first one's tied to the first Infamous game. The first one is called Infamous Precinct Assault, and it was a browser flash game that came out in 2009 to promote the first game in the series. It was a 2D side-scrolling platformer played from a third-person perspective, which I guess is kind of like the 2.5D stuff. Is I'm guessing what they're going with. Unlike the main games, the players must choose whether they want to use their powers for bad or good before the game starts, and it consists of 3 levels. I genuinely did not know this was even a thing until I did research for this episode. Did you ever play this?
Unfortunately, it was no longer active by the time I discovered it.
Okay. I'm trying to see. So if you go on there, I don't know if this is true or not. I'm gonna check it out. Holy shit, you can play it. You
Oh,
can
can you?
still play it.
Oh, I might have to
Yeah,
check that out after
I
this.
literally have it right now. Let me see what. Okay, I'm just messing around. Okay, wow, this is wild. Yeah, it's a 2D it's a 2D platformer. It's pretty rough around the edges, but that's crazy. I'm literally like playing it right now. If you just Google it, you can find it on gamesflow.com was what I found, and also on Newgrounds. Apparently, you can play it on launch. Yeah, you can play it on Newgrounds still.
Oh, cool.
That's fucking nuts. I'd have to see. You'd have to download the Newgrounds player, but anyway, that's really cool. So, yeah. Any final thoughts on gameplay before I tangented enough there about that random little offshoot. Any final thoughts on gameplay before we
Um,
get into? I guess we could talk about like visuals and music before we get into story. I guess, but any final
yeah.
thoughts on gameplay?
Yeah, well, if we're gonna save graphics and stuff for that, I think the last like thought on gameplay. Um, so one thing I found that was a little like, did you go for like full like 100%ing the map, like getting everything cleared?
I did do that. I didn't get all the blast shards, but I did do every single side mission. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Actually, real quick before we move on, do you want me to talk about the difference between a good playthrough and an evil playthrough in terms of like how
Oh
you?
yeah, yeah. Please
Okay.
do. Please do.
So this is just an observation I made. This might not be everyone's experience. This might just be how I play the game. But obviously, like in a good playthrough, like you have to follow the rules. You have to like be very mindful. Like you're running through crowds. You don't want to knock people over, take people out. You have to be very precise with what you're doing. Like you have to actually like avoid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like not destroy the city. Like when you're in like a fight, like a fight with a bunch of enemies, you don't want to like destroy property and like cause like damage to the city at the same time, stuff like that. In an evil playthrough, there's no rules. Like you can just mow through people when you're running down the street. If you're in a fight, like firefight, you can just blow up gas stations, blow up everything in your sight. Um,
Wow.
just jump off buildings. Doesn't matter who's below you. Just ground pound into the ground. It makes the game a much different experience. Like you like literally in some of them. So I found some missions were harder and some were a lot easier. Like a lot of the missions, like you have to be really careful not to injure other people. In an evil playthrough, you just don't care, and you'll just like zoom right through it, and like people be damned. But like other missions, like where you have to actually like deal with like certain like enemies and stuff, seemed harder in an evil playthrough because like I don't know if the the evil power growth just isn't as quick as a good playthrough or not. Maybe it's because there's less like people on the ground to like uh,
Hmm.
heal constantly. Um, it's just an interesting dynamic. Like I used to always joke saying like evil playthrough is just no rules mode where you just do whatever and have fun. Um, yeah, but a good playthrough is more of a an actual like more of a challenge. You actually have to think about what you're doing a lot of the time, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
The evil playthrough is.
The good playthrough,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, sorry.
the evil playthrough is a lot more. You can
Just do whatever you want. Like,
you
who
can
gives a shit? Yeah.
you can take a lot of risks. Like, you don't have to worry about murdering a lot of people by accident.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess that makes sense when if you don't like the evil playthrough is just like you only care about yourself, so who gives a fuck about the rest? That makes sense for the decisions that they present you with as well. Like it's always like what can benefit Cole, not what
Hmm.
can benefit the world type of thing.
Like, I in a good playthrough, like sometimes like you'll see like enemies fall in the water, and
Hmm.
an easy way to kill them is you just shoot the water and it will electrocute them.
Yep.
Well, sometimes a civilian will fall in there. You don't want to shoot the water because then you'll kill the civilian by accident.
Dude, you want to talk about accidentally killing civilians? If you walk through a puddle,
Uh huh.
you discharge. And there, I was doing an escort mission and I was trying to get like the civilians to come back with me, and I ran through a puddle and killed two of them. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yep. Yeah, in an evil playthrough, you don't have to worry. Um, oh, actually, before we move on, there's a couple mission types. Did you want to bring up some of the
Oh
interesting
yeah,
ones,
yeah.
some of the
So
not so fun ones?
there's some of the side missions you have. Oh man, there's even just like standard missions we didn't even talk about that are fairly consistent too. We'll start off with the side missions. You have side missions like the relay where you essentially you basically have to connect like these different satellite dishes by be the electrical current between them kind of,
Hmm.
and you have like 5 seconds, 5 to 12 seconds depending on the challenge to get from one dish to the other, and that's where a lot of the parkour skills come through. It really is meant to test your movement tech and
Hmm.
how well you've mastered the movement of the game, and you can read landmarks and environments as you're going through, which is kind of cool. It's a good way to kind of test your skills in
Hmm.
a easy, safe environment.
Those are fun.
Um, there's also escort missions, whether it's to escort a group of like 10 civilians from one location to another, or escort enemies like who are meant to be
I
interrogated by the police.
I
Uh,
hate escorting the enemies. My
they're
God.
kind of annoying. I'm not gonna lie, they are kind of annoying. Specifically, like essentially the reason why the escort missions are annoying with the enemies is that periodically the enemies will either choose to fight back, and it's only two of them, only two out of the four. There's always four of them, and two of them will be like, "We're going to try to take you out," whether it's by throwing cans at you or by actually fighting you, or all four will cower, and there's some enemies that actually spawn and try to rescue their allies.
Or the
Uh,
worst case, two of them run. Yeah.
yes. Oh my god, that's a pain in the ass. I pretty much just always stood a little bit of a distance from them and just was like had my like if you hold L1 you'll aim, and I would
Hmm.
just have it trained on them, and the moment, especially later on, you get an ability where essentially you can snipe with
Hmm.
electricity, and so essentially you see once you see them start running, you can do the sniper mode, which slows down time, and then you just snipe them in the head and then you're good to go.
Yep. Yeah, I hated those missions so much. Anytime one popped up, I'm like, no. Um,
They aren't the greatest for sure.
anytime
What
you have to deal with like the game's AI, and just like how that's gonna work out.
I was actually impressed by some of the AI things where it was like, the the prisoners would get split up, and then after you like kind of complete that section where they're like, they try to rebel, and you it feels very like authoritarian.
I love Jason Cottle's like, get moving, like anytime they're not moving.
Oh, it's so crazy. And but
I
like,
hate that he got recast in the second game. I'm not gonna lie.
why he did?
Yeah, it's a completely different. They gave him like a southern kind of. I don't want to be mean, like kind of a hickish voice.
Southern drawl.
Yeah, well, not even a drawl. Just he sounds like, this is mean. I don't want to. He sounds like he's from Louisiana, kind of.
Hey, I have friends from Louisiana, Bill.
I'm sorry. not that you have friends. I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. Oh, you know what I mean, though. It's just it's such a drastically different voice from his the voice he has in this, which is like a Batman edgelord voice.
That's so interesting. I wonder why they recast him. I don't know if I don't know if it was like he just didn't want to do it or what. I don't know. What other side missions do you want to touch on though? I know there's more. I'm having a hard time remembering them all. There was one where there's like you have to scale a building and take out surveillance things, which I kind of hated that.
Yeah, because you had to deal with the parkour, which was never fun sometimes.
Specifically that kind too, because it was like you're just scaling buildings, which was the worst part of their platforming. What the best part is when you're moving on, like, you're using your grind combined with, the float and everything like that. I know there's proper terms. I'm just blanking on the terms right now. But the climbing up sides of walls was just never good.
Especially aiming for very precise things on the side of said walls.
Yes, yeah. Though, well, that like you couldn't even aim. Could you actually shoot them off the wall? I thought you had to be physically close to them. No.
So I found out in my most recent playthrough, if you jump around it and just mash the fire button, sometimes you can hit it, and it just like
they would always tell me triangle, so it wasn't even the fire button. But yeah, I would do that. I would jump around, and you just mash triangle in the hopes that you get the right angle for it.
Sometimes you'd get lucky and it would work, and I'd be like, thank God. The missions that I liked, these ones, maybe not for everybody, but sometimes you'd get like a mystery package, and you just get a picture of where it is. And I like these because it made me actually have to think about the map and like where it, because it was a good enough like image where you'd be like, I know where that is, but you'd have to really think exactly where it is. And it was kind of fun. Like you'd go find the area and then you'd kind of like scope around for it. You look at the picture, and then you'd kind of keep looking, and eventually you'd find it. And like when you did, you'd be like, "Oh, cool."
I was pleasantly surprised by that because I remember the first time I played it, I did not like those side missions. But now playing it, I'm with you. I like playing it for this episode, replaying it. I'm with you on that. I really enjoyed that because it felt like a fun puzzle. I realize the older I get, I don't necessarily like all just the action frenetic stuff. I like a puzzle that like kind of challenges me a little bit, and that's saying something because I generally am not good at puzzles. So like that's actually, I shouldn't say it's saying something. That's great for me because since I'm not good at puzzles, almost every puzzle challenges me. So I enjoy doing them.
I love the way they did it too, because they specifically chose like areas of importance or like key areas of like note. Like they never were like, let's go between these two random buildings and have fun finding that. It was always like, say, in the park or like by that sculpture.
Yep.
Somewhere that's distinct, which I really like because it got the brain working, and you'd have to like think it out. And then once you found it, it was like just such a nice feeling.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. There's a bunch more side quests, I know, but we do have to. We're already almost an hour and a half in, and we still have a lot more to talk about. So I want to make sure we move on a little bit. The last thing I'll touch on with gameplay, though, is the missions where essentially in parts of the city, since power is out, you have to restore the power by going to a substation in the sewer. The first one is no problem. The later ones, though, getting to the substation is a huge challenge because the enemies always have like turret trucks, which are a fucking pain in the ass to deal with. But like if you get good at traversal, you can bypass. Like at first I hated that, but by the end I actually kind of loved it because it basically let you choose like, do you want to have a really challenging combat encounter that you like because you like the combat more, or do you want a more challenging platforming encounter because you're having to dodge all these enemies and hide behind things, not necessarily hide from them. They'll find you. They're the AI will find you, but it's just knowing the best routes to dodge the worst parts of the damage and whatnot. And one of the most satisfying things for me, because I like the combat for that wasn't always fun because for me, just because you would lose so much electricity and you couldn't readily recharge because power was still out in that section. And also, I like also from a narrative thing, when the power is out, Cole feels a little bit fuzzy because there's no electricity for him to
Mm-hmm.
kind of like regulate himself on, I guess. Um, but it was always satisfying for me because if you kind of use the rooftops to get around all the blockades and stuff like that, there was one time I did like as one of the electric grinds, or I couldn't do electric grind. Sorry, because that was the power's off. But you like jump off a building and then use the hover, and you would like the enemies are shooting at me, like I'm hovering like over a whole swaths of enemies, but I landed perfectly on top of the sewer grate,
Mm-hmm.
which automatically put it into the cutscene, so I didn't take any damage and I just went underground and I ignored everything. It was a really satisfying little bit of like platforming and stealth, well, not
Mm.
stealth, but like platforming, I should say.
I will say, like the first time you go into a dark area and you forget about it after a while, jumping on a rail and then just not grinding is very much like, oh, and you're like, okay, because then you just kind of walk across it very slowly.
Also, it's really shocking when, no pun intended, when you're on the rails and you go like you'll be grinding, but there's a section of the rails that doesn't have electricity
And you just
because
stop.
you just stop. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? That's not how electricity works. This whole thing would still be like on, like there would still be electricity for all of this. What are you talking about? But it was I forget what section of the city it was. I think it was in the second island where like one like there's one tiny corner of the rail that didn't have electricity, so
And it
like
just
you walk
stops.
like 10 feet to the left and you have electricity again, or you walk 10 feet to the right and you have electricity again, but for that 20-foot gap on this like corner, there was just no electricity on the line. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I was so mad.
Electricity is afraid of the dark.
Apparently. Oh my god. But so you go into the substation, they have some cool little platforming mechanics, and they give you a new ability in these substations.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you would get, your grenades, your hover, your shield. There's a shield that you can get as well that I forgot about. Stuff like that. So yeah, it was satisfying in the sense that they gave you a slightly harder challenge to get to the substations. And once you get to the substations, they give you new power, which then they test you and train you. Like it's good game design where the latter half of the substation is the training grounds, the practice grounds for you using that new power, and kind of teaching you the mechanics through that gameplay. So that way, when you're out of the substation, you can use it more efficiently in the regular combat.
Exactly. It's a very satisfying gameplay loop. Like you'll do a substation, then you'll unlock a whole bunch of new areas of the island. Then you you go and unlock as much of that island as you can. Then you go to the next substation. You do it all over again.
You get stopped on the railroad tracks when you're just trying to fucking grind. Yeah, it is. I'm with you. It's a super satisfying gameplay loop. But all right, that's all the time we got for gameplay. We have to move on. We've been talking enough about this. I don't have much to add because this is always the section of my show that's the weakest. Maybe it's something I should practice, like describing. You know what? Let me try to seriously think about this. I already said the music I wasn't a fan of. For the visuals, I think for 2009, Cole and all the character models look pretty damn good.
Hmm.
The animation is a little choppy even for 2009, but I forgive it just because it's their first like HD game, first open world game, but it is a little rough around the edges for that. Like specifically like when you're in cutscenes, and since they don't do cutscenes in the sense of like, here's a movie graphics and then here's, in-engine graphics. Everything's in engine, which is cool. It keeps you immersed in the game, but some of the animations just feel a little bit off, and it doesn't always feel
It,
great.
it's very it's a very weird contrast, especially considering this game doesn't have like CG cutscenes like you were saying. Instead, they do these really awesome comic book style cutscenes, which are like
Yeah, they're great.
they are. Did you know this? There was a 6-issue comic for Infamous.
Yes, I don't think I read it though, but I did hear about it.
It's I just looked on eBay while we were talking, and I just saw that they're like all $100 each. So I'm not collecting that anytime soon. But it exists. Apparently, it's a prequel or a midquel between 1 and 2.
Okay.
But apparently, DC actually released it too, which is kind of cool because it kind of fits that DC vibe.
You know what? Even though it was written by a Marvel writer, yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about. I actually, to be fair, I don't know if he worked on Marvel before this or after this, or like when Marvel came into the picture. He could have done Infamous and then did stuff with Marvel. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I think overall, like the visual presentation is really solid. I don't think it's anything to write home about. I think the character models are good. The city is a little bit boring. um I'm trying to think, like, what could I compare it to at the time. Like, when did GTA 4 come out? Now,
It-
granted, I can't necessarily completely. GTA 4 came out in 2008. That
yeah.
city feels a lot more fully realized. Granted, Rockstar has a significantly
Oh
bigger
yeah,
team,
and a
a lot
much
more than
more
60
budget.
people, a lot
Much
bigger of
more
a
budget.
budget. Yeah, so it I do think it suffers from that, but I think, like, just I'm talking about just purely visuals. I don't think the city's all that visually interesting. I think it's a little bit too gray, but granted, I was also playing on a shitty TV, so maybe my shitty TV had something to do with it. I got actually a new HD TV that I'm really jazzed about, so maybe I'll take a look
Nice.
at it on there. But it like the game looks overall fine. I just think that compared to other stuff at the time, it really showed that this was their first time doing a game like this. So
Yeah.
it took a hit. And that's fine. Like, I'm not saying that to denigrate the game, but since I'm just talking about, like, or denigrate the game overall, I still think this game is really good. But if we're just talking about the visuals, they're fine. I would say they're average. They're not below average. They're just kind of painfully average, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
It I will say I'll give it a little bit of points. It does fit that really desolate wasteland, like
Yeah,
a
for
post
sure.
not post apocalyptic, more of a dystopian kind of vibe that it's trying to go for. But you can tell it is very much limited in a lot of ways. There is a lot of texture fuzz and draw distance issues. Um, that being said, I do like the character models though. I think they're all pretty unique.
Hmm. Hmm. Uh, absolutely. I mean, the civilians aren't, but like in terms of the mainline characters, yeah, there's a lot of unique. Even like we didn't touch on many of the bosses in the game. When we were talking about the gameplay, I just realized that just now. The bosses all had really cool and unique designs that
Mm.
complemented like the combat encounters that you had with them. Specifically, who's the chick at the end of the first one? I can't.
Sasha, I believe her name is.
Her fight was a lot of fun. Where like she's like going in and out of water and stuff like
Oh
that,
yeah,
or
and
like
that
the
those like scenes where you have to like move Cole's hand into her face, and like
yeah,
it's like a weird like quick time event thing.
it's quick time events done kind of well, where it
Mm.
was done sparingly and it didn't feel too out of place. And they're very generous with like your
Oh yeah,
window of time that you can do it as. So I really, yeah, I liked that quite a bit. Um, I just realized like each area has like a different each area of the game has a different like gang group. Pretty much you
yep.
have like, oh my
The
gosh,
Reaper, the
the Reapers
Reapers,
in the first area, then like
the
the Trashmen in the second area, and then basically the main villains men. I won't say the villain's name just yet, but the main villains men is in the third area.
yes, I forget what he calls them. They're something. Oh, the First Sons. The
The
First
first
Sons.
sons, thank you. Which, yeah, oh man, that story's so good. But yeah, like all the characters look really, especially the main villain, the final villain of the game has a very, actually he looks very emperor esque in his like robes and shit like that,
Mm.
which kind of makes sense because if he's a bad guy and he's all like you. This is a very minor spoiler, but you see this very, very early on in the game that there's other people who have powers as well, other conduits.
Hmm.
So obviously, you're going to be fighting some form of a conduit, people who have these powers somehow. And so he kind of looks like the Emperor. That and he also has lightning powers, like Cole. So you kind of face him down. So it kind of fits with like the whole Emperor thing. Which his final boss fight was simultaneously one of the most frustrating fights I've played in a while because it's not necessarily hard. It's just tedious. Like you're waiting for so many different windows just to hit them.
Yeah.
And the challenge is waiting, just making sure you're biding your time appropriately. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, I'm with you. The character models are super interesting. The city itself is not, but I'll forgive it. I was not a fan of the music, but Bill, do you have any thoughts on the music before we move on to the final segment?
I like it in an atmospheric sense. I actually
Mm.
acquired this soundtrack through totally legal means.
Good
And
job. Good on you, Bill.
I listened to it. I think you can actually get a physical of it. I might do that at some point because I feel bad. But
That's fine.
I listened to it standalone.
Oh.
It's interesting music. A lot of the times I think it fits the vibe of what's going on at a given time. It's definitely, it's not like, it doesn't have that awesome, like when I think of like other Sucker Punch projects, it doesn't have that awesome like jazz style that Slime Music
Mm.
does, or the even what Rocket did, or even what Ghost of Tsushima does later on. It's a very, it fits the tone of the games, but it's, see, the thing is, I also, the music for each Infamous changes up because they have different settings. Like the second game goes for a more southern kind of sound, and then
Yeah.
Second Son is just straight up Seattle grunge because it takes place in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this game goes for that really kind of urban, kind of atmospheric sound, and I like it. But I do agree, I couldn't name you a track and be like this song right here.
Like it serves the game's purpose. Like the music for like when you have the comic book scenes are all pretty
Mm.
good in general, but like the presentation of the comic book scenes is great, just fantastic. Like I love all that stuff so much.
I
I
like
will.
the music when you're doing the satellite uplinks. Like that
That's
song was
really
always
good. Yeah.
kind of catchy.
I was one criticism of the comic book sections. It has nothing to do with the presentation or art. I feel like they don't allow the story beats that they're telling you through there to breathe enough. Like it feels like they just burn through it really
It's
quickly.
it's very similar to, because they actually lifted these comic sections. They did the same thing in Sly. Um, the Sly ones have the same kind of issue. The comic sections feel very quick. They're very stylized, very pretty, but I don't feel like they do enough to they just, there's not enough like time to really process them in, which is like one of my big appeals when it comes to reading a comic, is like you take in the art, then the words, and like you kind of can
Mm.
get the two different sides of how the story's trying to be told. And when it kind of like blasts through the story, I get why it does it because it's a game, but it goes through it so quick, it's really hard to take in what's going on.
Absolutely, and I think I do think it's a problem because sometimes there's a lot of big plot points in those comic book cutscenes,
Mm.
and they kind of just get pushed through. It's hard to really kind of follow with it. But all right, we do have to move on to our final segment here, Bill. We're going to talk about
Sorry,
the story of the
sorry, I like
games.
the sorry, I yap a bit with this
No,
game.
are you kidding me? This episode, I'm so happy with our conversation so far, man. I'm having an absolute blast with this. No pun intended with blast shards. I realized that after the fact. But yeah, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the story and kind of like some of the themes in the game a little bit. And I'm going to put up the spoiler wall here just because there is a lot there's a good story in this game. Like sometimes I don't care so much, but like I genuinely think this game has a better story than I was expecting.
Mhm.
Considering like I was just expecting, another freaking, prototype or something like that. But this game gives you a really solid story, and I'm excited to talk about it. So we're gonna dive into it here. I am going to just kind of quick do an overview of it, like what kind of like the plot is and like the different things, and then we can dive into it a little bit further. So sounds good.
Mm.
All
Yeah,
right.
perfect.
So like I said before, you play as Cole McGrath. You were a courier until this thing explodes. Like you're carrying a package, it explodes, and it completely levels a whole chunk of the city. And one of the things is you have a girlfriend named Trish, and caught in the wake of the blast is Trish's sister.
Hmm.
And so now it's taken a little bit of time since you've woken up from the blast and come back. And Trish, understandably so, doesn't really like you anymore. You caused her sister to die, even though it wasn't your fault. It still is like understandably so. She's very conflicted with this, as I think any normal person would be. What you find out is, or you go to crash on your best friend Zeke's pad. Zeke, I think, what's his last name? Do you remember what his last name is? He's got a weird.
It is. All right, one second. So it's Zeke Dunbar and Trish Daly.
Okay, Trish Daly and Zeke Dunbar. So you meet up with your best friend Zeke, who's kind of like your country bumpkin friend, even though he lives in the city. He's a bit of a mover and a shaker. Like he, ever since all the electricity closed out. So after the explosion, like I said before, the government shuts down the city. All the electricity's out in the entire city. So he's selling his homemade batteries, which aren't very good. That's kind of like a running joke.
It's actually kind of interesting because throughout the series, he actually gets better. Like he's actually kind of a genius. He's just kind of building things with like junk, and he just makes these things.
Zeke's he's an interesting character too. I like him because he starts off as this bumpkin and he kind of turns into something a little bit more, which we'll get into. But you find out the thing that exploded was this thing called the ray sphere, and he, excuse me. The reason it explodes in the first bit is that he was instructed to go to this place called the Historic District in Empire City, and open the package. And in doing so, he activated the ray sphere. And I'm reading this from Wikipedia, but it leveled 6 city blocks, nearly killing him, granting him electrokinetic powers, and that's where the rest. That's the kind of the whole bit of it there. So he gets contacted by this FBI agent named Moya, who convinces him that he should help her because her husband John was in undercover with this group called the First Sons, who was investigating this ray sphere, and if he doesn't help her, the government is going to basically come in and firebomb the city. You know, like there's an outbreak happening. We just got to get rid of everything. We can't let this spread outside of the city, right? Kind of eerily parallel to, I shouldn't say parallel. It was never that chaotic during COVID, but it still is. Like that was people's fear during COVID, right? Like just these crazy lockdowns and everything. This is like an extreme lockdown for sure. So as you play through the game, you're basically going on all these missions, trying to learn more about who made the ray sphere, where did it come from, and you learn about this group called the Second Sons, headed up by this man named Kessler. And Kessler is he's been heading the research in this group, the Second Sons, and they're the ones that actually made the ray sphere, and the FBI is investigating them. I believe, did they make the ray sphere for the FBI originally? I'm forgetting about that.
It's kind of vague, like the reasoning behind it.
Actually, reading this here, John was tasked with investigating a group called the First Sons, and so they were just investigating it, and John was looking into it. And playing the game, you find dead drops, little like audio logs from John, and you learn more about the backstory, excuse me, of the First Sons' past, how he kind of gets into it, and stuff like that, and just some of the fucked up experiments that they were doing on people.
Actually, listening to the dead drops is like, holy crap! Like they go really weird places,
absolutely insane places. And by the end of it, John's like, I don't know if anyone's actually reading this, but I need to get out of here now. Like this is not safe. I've had to do things I don't want to do, type of thing.
There's another character too who is he's not really important to the plot in the long run, but he's kind of a bit of an annoyance throughout the game. It's known as the Voice of Survival.
Yeah, that the Voice of Survival is a character that is basically, he's spreading propaganda.
He's the one that turns everyone against Cole right at the start of the game.
Yes. He's always like, you all think this guy's helping you, but he's not. I'm here telling you the truth. The government's not going to tell you what's true. I'm telling you what's true. And holy fuck, the reason this game was so prescient to me is misinformation, dude. That is a rampant problem in our society today. One of the reasons our political world is so polarized, and you see it here where the big plot twist with this dude is that he was making the shit up in the first place. I believe by the government is the people who hired him, right? Was it the government or was it Kessler? I can't remember.
No, it was the government because we're in the spoiler section, so I'll say it. He gets taken out by the First Sons near the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And which is like, it's kind of sad that I don't feel bad in the slightest when it happens. I'm kind of like,
well, no, because it is this weird thing where the government is like playing both sides against each other type of thing. It
Hmm.
is either that or like even if it was Kessler, I could have sworn he said something like, hey, I thought I was doing everything you asked me to, and then he's killed. So I think maybe he worked for the First Sons.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
I think I remember that, but either way, like he is spreading, which would make sense because Kessler doesn't want people to like you, so that's kind of like the whole point of it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think he works for the First Sons because what you're seeing, right? You see broadcast by this dude. What's his name again? The voice of Empire City or
So
whatever.
his name is Dallas. Like it does actually give you a name, but the name that he goes by is the Voice of Survival.
The voice of survival. That's what it is. Um, it is fucking crazy just like playing this in 2025 where voice of survival is giving you propaganda from basically the people within the city, and then you're watching newscasts of like some shit will happen in the game, like you'll play some mission and then you'll see an official news report where the government's taking credit for shit that you did or
Hmm.
completely wiping it, like making up stuff that didn't happen. And it's fucking like in our current state of what's happening with the our government, with the current regime of like dismantling things, and like they're telling you one thing, then obviously there's the reality of what's really like. You're hearing things from all different sides. Listeners, I'm not trying to say what's happening is good, just to be clear. You all know where I stand. Fuck them people. Just we're gonna get off of it right now, but it made me so frustrated playing this game in a good way, in a sense. Like it was just eerie how much it felt like what's happening right now. Like two different sides are just spreading propaganda about the same shit, and meanwhile normal people like us can see what's happening and no one's like paying attention to it. It's just it's just
It's a
it
weirdly topical game.
yeah. And not even, it wasn't even trying to be. That's the thing. It's not
Yeah.
trying to make this type of message about propaganda. It's just literally like, wouldn't that be a cool part of the story and world building, this propaganda from both sides? But in our current situation with what's happening in our government, this feels so prescient to that. It's fucking crazy. uh our current government, anyway, I'm not going to go in, I'm not going to elaborate any further. It's just wow. I'm playing it, I was like, this is crazy to play now in 2025.
Hmm.
um so yeah, it man. And you go through the game and there are like little mini, like there are leaders of each of the gangs that lead all the way up to Kessler, the main villain.
Hmm.
The Reapers are run by a girl named Sasha, and both the leaders of these gangs, Sasha of the Reapers and Alden of the Trashmen, are former experiments of Kessler,
Hmm.
and that have kind of gone rogue a little bit. Like they've kind of been let loose into the city, and they've kind of gone rogue. They don't want to go back to Kessler because Kessler did awful shit to them, right?
Yes.
Um, and so you have to fight them, and like I believe they both end up getting taken out by Kessler, and Kessler keeps taunting you. Like you'll fight them and win, and then Kessler kind of takes them anyway.
Yeah. Kessler. The thing with Kessler in this game that you'll find out is he is always 3 steps ahead, and there's a reason for that. But we'll get to that when we get to it.
Hmm. And yeah, so you're learning more about what the race sphere is, and essentially the plot twist of what the race sphere actually is, this thing that gave you your powers, is that it essentially vaporizes everyone within that 6 block radius that we mentioned before, takes all their neuroelectrical energy and combines it into a single target, and whoever's holding the race sphere gets that power.
Hmm.
The problem is that most people that it's done to does not survive unless you are a conduit. A conduit
Yes.
is someone that can survive this. Cole happens to be a conduit. That's super odd. How come he got a courier thing and was told to deliver something to a specific place and open it, and all of a sudden he's a conduit? So you get vibes early on that like this was planned by someone, you don't know who. Uh, and I honestly, like, knowing the plot twist at the end of the game now, I'm mad at myself for not realizing
It
it,
it
it was
makes so
Kessler.
much
It
sense
does.
when
It
you
like
play it.
it it it, it makes so much sense. And one of the first big plot twists after that, like there's three big plot twists I would say in the game.
Mm-hmm.
One is finding out how the race sphere gives you powers. Two is Zeke's betrayal, where there's a section of the game where Zeke is helping you out, and you've defeated Kessler pretty much. Like you've won this. You're about to win this. Zeke has the race sphere, and Kessler basically says, "I can make you powerful if you just give it to me. I promise you, I'll do this." And Zeke's like, Zeke, to that point, he had been confiding you because he is your friend, that he's kind of jealous of your powers. Like he
Mm-hmm.
wishes he had them so he could feel important too. And it's a really good setup where, like, when that heel turn occurs, it feels very natural because Zeke had been alluding to it for a little bit of time leading up to that heel
Mm-hmm.
turn.
And it's very interesting too because it does show how weak and flawed Zeke is as a character.
Uh-huh.
The second he gets the race sphere, even before Kessler convinces him, he actually uses it. Like just flat out tries to use it, which Cole points out. He's like, that idiot. He's going to kill everybody here. But it doesn't do anything because he doesn't have the gene.
And I get, but it should have killed him. I guess there wasn't enough people though to, like, people in the
Yeah,
area.
it was vague about that, why it
I
didn't
would
work.
assume there just wasn't enough people in the area for it. And so when it didn't work, that's when Kessler was like, "I'll make it work for you." And Zeke's like, "I can't pass this up." And understandably so, Cole's fucking pissed at him.
Mm-hmm.
He's been betrayed by him. And there's that culminates in Kessler, like, once you get to the section where Kessler's really starting to taunt you, you've taken out Alden, you've taken out Sasha. There's a mission in the game, and this is that moral choice we've been alluding to for the whole episode, or at least I think you're on the same page as me with this, right, Bill?
If it's the one I'm thinking of.
With Trish.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Actually, before we get into that, I did want to bring up too. There's kind of a side story going on up to this point where Cole will run into Trish occasionally throughout the game, and their relationship is not good for obvious reasons. Um, you actually throughout these missions rebuild their relationship to the point where they're actually like they have a healthy relationship again, and
Mm-hmm.
it's perfect in the way it does this because it perfectly sets up for this upcoming choice.
That is a very good point, Bill, especially because they rebuild the relationship through gameplay. It's not through just stories and cutscenes. You are actively playing through rebuilding your relationship with your ex-girlfriend who you accidentally killed her sister. Like, it's nuts. And so this final choice that Kessler puts you through is that you can either choose to save 10 doctors who will help the city and can help the people, like, who can help people live like that. They can do a lot more than just Trish can. Trish is a doctor as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why you're helping her patients. It's how you kind of rekindle your relationship again. So you either choose to save the love of your life, the person you love more than anything. You just rekindled your relationship again, or you let 10 doctors die who not only that's 9 more lives than just Trish, it's also people that could exponentially help the city. And it leaves you with this very tough call.
Mm-hmm.
um Spoiler alert, but even though we're in the spoiler section, the morally right thing to do in the game, I'm not saying what's morally right in general, but the morally right thing to do is to save the doctors, because
Mm-hmm.
you're saving 9 more lives. They can then in turn save even more lives through their medical expertise. Trish is only one, but it's that saving Trish is the quote unquote evil option.
So I have to ask, have you done the evil option before?
No, I have not.
Do you want to know what happens? Because
Yes, I do.
it is so evil. So obviously you pick the good choice is save the doctors, and Trish sadly dies, but she sees you as the hero you are. Um,
Yes.
you go to save Trish. Surprise, it's a dummy. It's not actually her. All the doctors die, and then Kessler kills Trish anyways, and then she sees you as the evil person you are, and that's how that ends.
Wow.
It is so evil and
That's
like
so
the
dark.
biggest slap in the face if you
So
weren't
wait, then why
expecting
did
it.
Trish have to die in the first fucking place then if it was a
Well,
dummy?
it's explained later in the story exactly why.
Oh, really? In this game?
Y- Um, yeah, that it kind of gets into Kessler's backstory.
I guess so. I just like, well, we can spoil it anywhere in the spoiler section. Like
Okay.
I'm blanking on this because I remember the cutscene where Cole sees her dying in his arms.
So, do you want to save it for once we actually reveal Kessler's backstory because it kind of ties into that?
Sure. I mean, we're pretty much there as far as I'm aware, unless there's other stuff you want to talk about. Because those are the big plot twists leading up to the
There,
final big one.
well, there's one other choice that is
Okay.
also very. It's obvious which one's the evil, but it is a very compelling choice. The ray sphere, how you deal with the ray sphere.
Oh, at the very end. Yeah, the very end of the game, right? Or right before the end of the game, I should say.
Right before you go into the final Kessler confrontation, there you finally track down the ray sphere. John actually makes his a physical appearance in the game the one time he appears,
Oh,
and
there's a plot twist we forgot to mention too.
oh,
John and Moya don't know each other actually. Like
yep,
Moya knows who John is. John has no idea who the fuck Moya is. He's not married to her.
because
And
Moya's like secretly like a double agent. I believe she's not actually working for the side of good.
I just thought she was for the FBI, and it was just like I didn't think she was working for the Second Sons or anything. I
Well,
think she.
I shouldn't say double agent. That's the wrong phrasing. They're it's essentially corrupt government is going after the ray sphere because they want to use it as a weapon.
Yes, yeah,
That's
she's
what it
using
is.
subterfuge for you to get it, even for the FBI. But anyway, yeah. So John, you end up obviously siding with John and saying "fuck you" to Moya,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course that is when
It doesn't end well for Moya either.
it doesn't. I forget what happens to her too. Holy
One
shit!
of the it's kind of implied off screen that she gets taken out in one of the attacks.
Okay, okay. But yeah, so you can choose. You finally track down the ray sphere, and you can choose to either destroy it or make yourself as powerful as possible.
So, fun fact about this: if you are in like a perfect hero mode, like you have perfect hero, like you're maxed out, like everything. If you choose to use the ray sphere, instant evil, like max evil. Like
Wow.
even if you're max good, it'll go completely the other way because that is like the evilest choice in the game.
Which seems, I mean, I guess that makes sense because then you're using the race here to literally kill thousands upon millions of people again to
Just
make
for your
yourself
own
more powerful.
selfish desires.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is in an evil playthrough, it's kind of fun because you get like this massive power boost for no reason. But in a good playthrough, if I did like I did multiple saves because I was curious about some of these choices. I
Hmm.
just wanted to see what happened. Straight up max hero, instant evil, and I was like, wow, like that's crazy. That's why you can't technically do a neutral playthrough because your choice here will railroad you into good or evil.
And you're max at whatever you choose, I would assume at that point.
I'm not
And
sure if you get max good for doing the other choice, but I know if you choose the race sphere, like it instantly puts you in evil.
I'd be curious. You should try and play through where you do evil the whole way up until the race sphere and then choose the good option
That's a
and see what happens.
interesting thing. I actually might want to look into that because I know it because the only time I've ever gotten there with like the opposite was when I tried it with the good just to see what happens, and yeah, that actually would be interesting to think about now.
I'll have to see if I can find it online. Anyway, yeah, so you go to confront Kessler.
Oh, but actually,
Oh,
real
sorry,
quick,
go ahead.
we forgot the good option is you destroy the race sphere. Destroying the race sphere. This entire thing is also a spoiler for the sequel, but I won't say what happens. But when you destroy the race sphere, it causes a massive explosion that kills John in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very ambiguous what happened. It basically just it explodes and John gets like literally ripped to shreds by the explosion. And legit you find out what happens in the sequel, but it kind of leaves you on this like what did I just do kind of thought.
Okay. Okay. I need to play the sequel again, man. I really liked Infamous 2, but it's been so long since like I when I started replaying this, I remembered a lot of the plot twists, like specifically the one we're about to talk about, excuse me, and also the doctors and saving Trish and whatnot. I remember that, and I didn't remember Zeke until it happened. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I remember that. I remember nothing about Infamous 2 other than like
Okay.
there's like ice power conduits. Um, Spoiler alert. That's not a huge spoiler, I guess, but like um other than there's different power conduits and stuff than other than just electricity, which
It's all right. They were all over the marketing for the game, so it's not really a big secret.
and technically there's more than just electric conduits in this game, but like I was alluding to before, I don't know if I said it on mic or off mic now, but it's like the trashman conduits basically just shoot bombs and shit.
Yeah, they just basically shoot trash at you.
It didn't feel like it's an actual other conduit. I thought it was just weird. But yeah, so the final plot twist here that we're getting to, you find out that Kessler is actually
From the future.
a alternate reality future version of Cole. No, sorry, just a future version of Cole.
Well,
Who,
technically, you were right. An alternate future, because once you go back in time, you create this game's interpretation of time travel. It's the split time theory, where once you go back in time, you create a new timeline that splits off from the one that they came
yeah,
from, kind of thing.
it's not a cyclical type of thing.
Yeah, time travel's convoluted no matter what. That there's so many ways to explain it. I believe that's how this game's interpreting it.
Yeah, that's absolutely it, because basically what you find out, the big plot twist here, is Kessler is you from the future,
Mm-hmm.
and that Cole eventually will get powers no matter what happens. Like in the timeline that Kessler lives in, Cole, he gets powers. Him as Cole gets powers, and him and Trish are together. They're married. They're happily married, and he spends years running away from the
Mm-hmm.
problem with Trish, only to have basically they allude to like this evil thing is coming, this big evil thing. They don't really tell you what it is.
Yeah.
This big evil thing is coming, and you have to watch out for it. And since he spent so much time running away, Trish does end up dying by the time they actually confront the thing, or get either they confront it or get confronted by it, and he has to try to save everything. But when he I think he does end up winning from what I remember, but he's so distraught he doesn't want to have anyone to do this again, so he goes back in time. I don't know if he uses he uses something. He uses the technology of that day to go back in time, and he decides to join the Second Sons, which is an actual kind of like, I don't know if it was a militia group or like a secret society, pretty much. And he infiltrates them and uses his knowledge of the future to kind of warp them, and he starts getting them on the track to making the Ray Sphere earlier than it ever would have existed in his timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And that he ends up calling Cole, because he knows Cole is a younger version of him, to do this, because he knows he's going to be a conduit, and he sets all of this stuff in motion. All of the choices that Kessler puts you through is a test, so that way when this evil thing comes around, he will have the essentially the stones to make the decisions that need to be made.
Yes. And earlier you had mentioned, why did Trish have to die? The reason for that is it's actually implied, because he ran away with his family and was woefully unprepared for the fight against the great evil that's coming. The way he thinks about, he basically decides to do this, is when he goes back, is he needs Cole to not have any sort of nothing that can hold him back in his what he needs to do. So he makes it a point that Tish needs to die. Is it Tish or is it Trish?
I think it's Trish, but you know what? Give me just a second. I can double check that.
I don't know where Tish came. I think it is Trish.
I'm trying to find it, and I see, yeah, Trish Taylor.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know where Tish came from. Either way,
Tish is close to Trish. It's fine.
Yeah. The reason Trish had to die was he needed Cole, any sort of emotional baggage Cole had needed to go away, because he needed him to be focused 100% on this inevitable fight that was coming. Because, spoiler warning, that fight is in the sequel.
And what I love about this plot twist too is that Kessler is trying to essentially make you do the evil path. The entire game, he wants you to do the evil path because he believes that you need to be ruthless in order for the greater good to occur. And the canon story is Cole aggressively pursuing the righteous path, the good karma path, because he is not going to be swayed that way. And I think that makes such a beautiful story, like counterbalance between these two characters, where it's not just like Kessler's not just evil for the sake of being evil. He's evil because he thinks it's going to help the greater good. So he's going back in time to help his younger self realize the same lessons he learned earlier, but by in doing so he makes his younger self learn completely different lessons that could have, like, the ironic thing is that if he didn't kill Trish, maybe she would have survived anyway, but because he was so focused on like like he can't have any connections, I have to do this, that ends up like he ends up killing the love of his life again.
Mm.
It's so fucking heartbreaking. It's an absolutely
It's
fantastic story.
it is a very tragic. It's a beautiful tragedy, I'd like to call it.
Yeah.
It's also, it is a little hard to. The sad part is when you know what happens in the sequel, it does kind of diminish the happy kind of conclusion this game has. But
Well, I wouldn't say this game has much of a happy conclusion. It's, Trish is dead, and Cole has this impending doom of this
true,
great
true.
evil that's coming.
Happy is not the right word. It's more of the, I guess, uplifting ending, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
That might be a better word
Is
for it.
the second game have a more downer without spoiling? Because I don't remember the story at all.
Oh, the downer ending.
It's a downer ending?
Um, Depending on which ending you go for, the canon ending though is pretty. It's not great. That's all I'll say. Well, it's a great ending to to Cole's story.
It's a good story, but it's a sad ending.
Yeah, the ending's a downer. That's the best way to put it.
Good to know. Good to know.
Because like in this game, the good ending's canon. Because the good ending's always canon for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Because you always want to assume the best in people, and actually, usually that's true. A lot of times, studios say like most people choose the good ending. Like the vast majority of gamers choose the good ending, unless they're just lying to us. But I don't know. Propaganda like this game teaches us about.
yeah, I know, right?
But yeah, so that final fight with Kessler is insane. Lots of different like mechanics that he throws at you. I'm not personally a fan of it, but like I didn't hate it. There's a couple times where I was so close to beating it, and then something would happen, and I remember I took him out with one hit, or I took him out with the last hit, but he also hit me, so I died, and I had to redo the whole fight over again. Like shit like that. Oh man, it was frustrating. But that's pretty much the end of the game. That's like the big plot twist at the end, and the game really, like, it's funny for a game that really dealt with so much binary in terms of its karmic system. The characters are anything but binary. Like Kessler is like, he goes full evil, but there's a reason for it, and there's a sadness behind it that's more complex than just being selfish. And that, because like Cole, the good and evil karma system is like, do I want to be selfish and only think about me, or do I want to think about others and be more altruistic? Right. That's essentially that's it. And they're very clear what's good and what's bad. In fact, so much so that, like I said, there are good missions and like good side quests for good karma, and bad side quests that give you bad karma. And it's very clear this is meant to be binary in terms of gameplay, but where it kind of fleshes it out is the reason I think it works is because it is a superhero story, and superheroes, you can either be the superhero or the supervillain, and that's kind of that's why it's so binary, and the story works well with that. But then it gives all the other characters surrounding Cole a lot of really interesting motivations, in my opinion. Like Kessler is such a great character for his motivations, where he, I just can't get over the fact that he loves Trish so much that he doesn't want this to happen. But he feels compelled to be part of this greater purpose, and he does things that he would never do because it's going to save, the greater good. It's just, I love the story of this game, man. I really love the characters. Cole starts off as a really boring character, but ends up with like all the stuff that happens to him. Like, you kind of feel more connected to him by the end. I love this story.
It's amazing how compelling it is, especially because one of the things I always say is like a lot of open world games, their stories kind of get lost in the fact that like you tend to spend most of the game kind of exploring and not really paying attention to the story. In Infamous in particular, I found like the story is like the one thing that kind of keeps you from completely getting lost in the city, because you always want to know what happens next. That's why like I like would aggressively hunt down the dead drops, because I was just curious about the weird lore of this world.
Hmm.
And like it's just it's crazy how it's even crazier. Like I don't want to spoil the second game because we'll cover that at some point, but it's crazy when you learn everything here and then you get to the second game and it all of a sudden like kind of throws you for a loop because you learn so much more.
In the second game, you learn so much more. Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff you learn in this game gets completely turned on its head when you get to the second game, which actually gives you a lot of context for like what actually happened here.
I'm excited to replay that, man. I maybe I'll put it on another poll later this year or something like that, because like I did enjoy my playthrough. I think it's more than anything, and I guess we can use this as a segue into final thoughts. Um, I think more than anything, this game, I appreciated the story and world building and characters a lot more than the gameplay, but the gameplay is still good.
Mm.
You know, like I think really where, how can I put this? The gameplay in this game, I think overall is good but janky because of the platforming
Yeah,
controls and stuff like that. Good but janky, and the combat mechanics are really good, but also are a little janky at times. But overall, not bad. I just think what this game set a really solid foundation for what the series would become, and also, in all honesty, put Sucker Punch like on the road to Ghost of Tsushima, which is their
mm,
most critically acclaimed game. I believe it is, at least.
I believe
Um,
so.
I love Ghost of Tsushima. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and it's, I mean, maybe not of all time, but it's up there for me. I really like that. I really like this game, or that game, and you can see bits of the DNA in terms of like the open world design in this, but like you can see how much they learned from the Infamous series onto Ghost of Tsushima. Man, like it's this set the template for a lot of the stuff they did, and I love this game. I really
Mm.
enjoyed my time with it. So yeah, I don't
Oh,
do like
I
what, sorry.
I completely just forgot. Evil ending. It's basically the same as the good ending, only Cole's a jackass rather than the uplifting ending of like the
That's
good ending.
that I think I said it when I was reading off some of the postmortem, where they didn't want the good and evil thing to be like a defining characteristic of the story per se, but they
Mhm.
wanted it to be a defining characteristic of the gameplay,
Yeah,
which I think they definitely nailed.
I just felt like the need to bring it up just because in 2 and Second Son the endings are drastically different. This game they're basically the same. It's just kind of there's a lot of moral stuff surrounding them.
Hmm. But I've said my piece, man. I love this game. I think it's fantastic. I think it's an underrated PS3 game. I think it's definitely not a hidden gem because people know about it, but it's something where I don't think people really talk about it, and they definitely should. So
It's one of the reasons to own a PS3. It was one of the reasons to own a PS3 back then. It's a reason to own a PS3 now, as I would say.
yeah, because you can't get this anywhere else, as far as I'm aware, unless you can get it on a PS5 or four.
No, it's
Um,
stuck on PS. It's in PS3 purgatory, as I like to call it.
yep. So, Bill, as the guest, you get the final word on this game. Like, final thoughts. Just let's round this episode out.
So for a long time, I used to say Infamous was the first superhero game that got it right, but I actually think Batman Arkham Asylum came out like right around the same time, so there might be a little crossover there. But that being said, I do think Infamous is one of the best superhero games that really nails the feeling of you being your own hero or villain. It is such a compelling story combined with a fascinating world featuring a lot of choices and a lot of different. It's one of those games to me that makes you think a lot of the times in what you're
Hmm.
doing, and really kind of engages you to like explore, but also like you explore and take things in while also gradually like completing like the games. Like this is a great game if you want to kill time, but also like constantly feel engaged. Like it's never boring, which to me is like the best part. It's the best thing a video game can ever be, is never being boring. And there's always something to do in Infamous. Go either you're collecting random blast shards, dead drops, doing side missions, or just like generally like helping people around the helping or hurting, depending on your play style.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
just people around the city and just exploring Empire City and seeing the world and gradually finding out more about this strange world. And I just love everything about it. I'm so as much as the PSN outage sucked, I'm kind of happy because it helped me experience this game when I did.
I really want not necessarily this game to make a comeback because I like what Sucker Punch is doing now with Ghost of Yote. Like I'm looking forward to that, but it still feels to me like this series is just criminally underrated for how popular it actually was. Like it sold well. Like
Hmm.
it overall did, like all of the games have done decently well in terms of their Metacritic ratings and stuff like that. Um, and it's weird, like this one, at least on Wikipedia, it's got the highest Metacritic rating out of all of them. I think Second Son is better than this game. Not saying this game is bad, mind you, but like I don't know. That's just that's odd to me. But I don't know. I guess the what I'm trying to say is though, like I said at the beginning of the episode at the top, like why is it that Sucker Punch games don't feel like they get the love they deserve compared to the other big like Sony, quote unquote Sony developers, Insomniac and Naughty Dog. Like I would say, PS4 era, Insomniac and Naughty Dog both had like kind of like equal footholds because like Marvel Spider-Man was insane, like
Hmm.
one of the most popular games there. And then obviously Naughty Dog did, Uncharted 4 and Last of Us Part 2 and even Uncharted Lost Legacy, which is
Hmm.
also really good. Um, but all Sucker Punch had, they had two games. They had Ghost of Tsushima and and
Technically
Infamous
three,
Second
because
Son and Last
technically
Light or
Infamous
whatever it was.
First Light is
First
it
Light.
actually, believe it or not, got a physical release in Europe, which I imported because you can, and it's actually a kind almost a full game. It's kind of like Lost Legacy in a way.
Interesting. I need to play it still. That's the only Infamous game I have not played is First Light. But I think it just bums me out because it wasn't until Ghost of Tsushima where I feel like they really got the flowers in terms of like public perception that they definitely deserved. Um,
You know what I think it might be?
yeah. Hmm.
That was around the point where Naughty Dog was kind of in the Last of Us Part Two, where people were kind of like there was very much a split in the Naughty Dog fandom at the time, and well, I think Marvel Spider-Man is a phenomenal game, and Insomniac is still one of the greatest developers of all time. Marvel Spider-Man, that's not for everybody, and Ghost of Tsushima was just such a unique, like, different game when it came out, and it really
Yeah.
stood out.
Yeah. Man, I want to replay that game. I there's so many games I want to replay, and so I have I replayed Horizon Zero Dawn last year for in preparation to play Forbidden West. I have Forbidden West, haven't played it yet. I got God of War Ragnarok, but I want to replay God of War 2018
Hmm.
before I play Ragnarok. I'm like, man, I don't have time to play. Like the God of War 2018 is a decently long game. I don't have time for that right now if I'm not covering it for the show. And I would rather go through the first couple. This is all podcasting stuff. Like I'm like, well, I can't talk about God of War 2018 unless I do the other God of War games prior to that. And it just this is where my mind goes. Anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap up this episode, though. Bill, we're over 2 hours. We're closing in on two and a half. Like probably by the time we're done plugs, it's going to be about 2.5 hours of recording. We'll see what it
and,
edits
and
down to.
you know what the crazy part is?
Hmm.
Two and Second Son are probably going to be longer because there's so much more to say about those
Oh my god.
games.
I mean, I was worried I wasn't going to find enough background stuff for this, but we spent like the first 30 minutes just talking about like background context and development stuff, excuse me, leading up to the game itself. So like I'll see if there's more for it, but like that freaking y'all, if you want to learn more about how games are made and you want an easy way to access it, look up one of your favorite games. Pretty much, I would say from like the PS3 era and on. Our earlier games do it as well, but I think they're going to be harder to find. And just look up the post mortem for it. So whatever game like Uncharted 2 post mortem stuff like that, you will find lots of interesting tidbits from the development, and it's a really good way to kind of learn more about like what they were thinking when they were coming up with different ideas. Hence this, I had no idea that they had like ammo types for different energy for different like conduit powers and stuff. I'm glad they got rid of it. I think that was smart, but like it but it's kind of cool to see like where their head was at initially and how it ended up being, or how it ended up at the end. Like, specifically the whole like Animal Crossing, but you're a superhero. Like that's
Yeah.
fucking nuts to me. Like who would, like when you see Infamous, you don't think that at all, but that was where their head was at when development started. It's kind of nuts.
Mm.
But yeah, so that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for checking out this one. This was a great conversation. Bill, I can't thank you enough. As per usual, my friend, where can the good people find you online, and what would you like to promote?
Yeah, thanks again, Josh. This was awesome. I love this game, and I'm glad we got to like go deep into it because my God, there's so I forgot how much I loved Infamous, and this just completely reminded me of that. But you can find me in my 3 podcasts because I have no self control sometimes. You can find them at linktree / the Barber Games, or you can go check me out over at the Superpod Network. It's a little group of podcasters, me and a few people I've met around the community, where we post also our podcast. We do videos, we do blogs. It's just a fun group of people, and all the creators there are worth checking out. But yeah, that's where you can find my 3 shows. And thanks again, Josh, for having me on.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure having you on. And I mean, when this we're recording this beforehand, but listeners would have heard you just a few weeks ago on, or maybe actually, I think when I'm actually releasing this out, I'm releasing it later than I normally do for a Patreon poll episode. So it'd be like a month ago. You were on the Super Mario or Mario and Luigi Partners in Time episode. So people, if you want to, if you like this episode and you want to hear more of Bill, go back and hear that episode. We haven't recorded it yet, but I'm sure it's a fucking fantastic episode. So go check that out.
It's
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's another game that I know stupidly too much about. So
That's good because I well actually at the time of recording this I've not done my research for it yet, so I'll find out how much I know in a couple of weeks. But anyway, as for myself, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, at Still Loading Pod. Don't follow me on Twitter. I'm not active over there anymore. You can also follow me on Twitch at Still Loading Pod. I stream usually twice a week, usually Saturdays around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesdays, I stream over with my buddy Andrew at the Experience Point, at the EXP Point, over on Twitch, usually around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard as well. And then if there's time after that, I will stream over on my Twitch, at Still Loading Pod. So that's when I usually stream, but I have been finding more free time, so I will stream periodically throughout the week as well. But you can check it out over there. If you want to support the show, if you've enjoyed this conversation, you want to find some way to support the show, it would really mean a lot to me. And an easy way to do that is just give it a 5-star rating or review on whichever podcasting app you use. It takes you only a little bit of time, and it really means a lot to me. It also helps more people find the show, so please consider doing that. If you really like what you've heard and you want to get more content and help out even more, there is a Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. As for as little as $1, you can get all the episodes earlier with better audio quality. You also will get patron voting rights, which this episode was a patron chosen episode. This game was chosen by my patrons. I do quarterly polls, and you can join the Patreon and pick a game. When I post a poll, I'll usually throw up 4 games, and you can pick one of the 4 and help guide the direction of the show. For $3 a month, you get all the stuff I mentioned prior at the $1 tier, plus patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get all the previous stuff, plus 2 mini bonus episodes. And for $5 a month, you get everything. All the things I mentioned, plus my monthly movie podcast, which at the time this episode is coming out, we are in the midst of my Still Family series, my monthly Fast and Furious movie podcast, where all the guests who join me aren't just friends, they're family. So that's all over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. And $5 a month gets you all that stuff. So if that interests you, or if you just want to vote, it's only $1. So that's all the time I have for you on this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all so much for listening. Bill, thank you once again for joining me.
No worries, man.
And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.